Want to get it off your chest? You're in the right place. They accuse this show of being run by boobs. Well, let me tell you about us boobs. We're real and we're spectacular. Want politics and fun sprinkled with a lot of laughs? Heard in every state in the Union and 1,000 cities around the world. We just finished 16 years of broadcast excellence, now in our 17th year. The Dave Weinbaum Show is streaming live all over the world.
All right. Well, good morning. Good morning, Don.
Hey, Bill.
JP.
Yeah.
In the studio.
Good morning, everybody.
Right.
Is this the first ever guest host of the Dave Weinbaum Show?
Is it?
You know, here's the deal. I don't know if it's the first ever, but I know it's the first ever since we've done it in this platform.
Right. The podcast platform.
Yes.
Yeah. So usually
this is definitely an unprecedented show. We're doing a first of a kind.
This is a first.
This is a first. And,
kind of like the first true republic.
Yeah. Which was, of course,
not Canada. Yeah. The United States of this is.
Oh, yeah. Did those people follow you in, Don?
Yes, they do. They follow me everywhere I go.
You know that Dave is especially playing overtime for that today.
Yeah,
4th of July. Yeah. They're on holiday pay.
Well, first of all, those aren't paid. Those are real organic people,
yes, of course,
who are patriotic and groupies for Don Mayhew.
Now, some of them happen to be here for the parade, so we was able to enlist those. And so I got to tell a little story. While I was waiting on the sidewalk out front, a guy comes running by and he goes, "You're here a little early for the parade." I said, "This is a less than hostile takeover of the show. It's not like when the CIA would want to take over a banana republic. Did I say that out loud? Some 3-lettered organization would want to take over a banana republic. That send 12 guys over to the radio station and instantly they had a coup, right? But this is more like somebody left the door open kind of a thing."
Yeah, it's not hostile. It's more like, is there anybody who would possibly want to cover for me while I'm gone? Yeah. Is there anybody who wants to talk more and more? It feels they don't get to talk enough.
I can't think of a bunch of people for that. How did he end up on us?
They did a casting call for the old guys from the Muppet Show, and then they were like Bill.
Well, they got one of them.
Well, I got the soul for it. You know what I mean?
Well, we often, take this day for granted. And I think you feel the same way, Bill, is that I couldn't think of anything better to do on July 4th than talk to folks about freedom and liberty.
Yeah, I think that's, today's a special day. It's not just fireworks and hot dogs and barbecues. It's creating something that is exceptional in history, which is a government by the people for the people.
Yeah.
The republic comes from the Latin word for thing of the people. It means we create it. It's not a king ruling over us. It's a government that's supposed to be accountable to us.
Yeah, it's the flip of that. Exactly. It's the folks are in charge of their government. Now we have recognized that, and certainly in the recent past, where the government has tried to flip that around on us. But the very words of the Constitution, and including the Declaration of Independence, make it our duty to keep them from doing that. And that's how it was structured. It was meant to be that way.
Yeah, we got the We the People movement. We the People, and it's kind of viewed as a conservative movement or viewed as a, hey, the government's gone too far movement. But that phrase comes from the preamble, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union.
Yeah.
And so in our founding documents, we recognize that the power of the government comes from the people, right? It derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. And then the rights that the government is to protect and secure come from our creator, the enable rights from our creator. Mm-hmm. So the founding documents lay out that philosophical governmental precept. Mm-hmm. The French Revolution didn't have rules like that.
Not even close.
The French Revolution didn't have that. The communist revolutions of the 20th century that were populist, they missed those elements. Yeah. That rights don't come from the government, they come from God. And that the powers of the government are only justly derived from the consent of the governed. Mm-hmm. That's something special about America. You've had other populist uprisings. You could argue that Julius Caesar was a populist. Mm-hmm. You could argue that Octavian, Caesar Augustus, he was a populist because they looked to the masses. They placated the desires of the masses. They played on their desire to attack an elite, right? Even socialism did that. But they all missed those elements. That because once they came in power, mm-hmm. Whatever rights you had were determined by the government. The government was its autonomous thing that had you under its thumb, and there wasn't any restriction on it, right? Hmm. There wasn't restriction on it like in America.
No breaks.
Yeah, exactly. So the founding precepts of America make it so it's a revolution like no other. All the revolutions for thousands of years before us weren't like that, including the Roman Republic and Empire. And then the revolutions that followed America weren't like that. They lacked those essential ingredients that I think made us had the potential to be a just country.
Well, yes, and in fact, it was summed up. I think somewhere in the Federalist Papers, where the people are the sovereign. Yeah. Under our current Constitution, right. The people are the sovereign, and when you think about it that way, and certainly in the context of that time period, they were always ruled over by a king, and in fact, even with England at the time was a parliamentary, quote unquote, democracy or parliamentary monarchy,
right?
And so with the idea that the parliament had control, when in reality they didn't. There was a sovereign above them and could veto anything that they had put out. And in fact, that's how we ended up where we're at, right? The king became a tyrant. Well, a little bit less than what we've actually seen now, with our past government here, especially the 4 years prior to this year. We saw a government completely out of control, being very tyrannical. And let's face it, the American Revolution was really centered around taxes, right? And that was the big egregious foul. But from the context of your freedom and liberty, what was the government doing in order to infringe on that? Well, they were exerting their authority through the use of collecting taxes and oppressing their people in that manner. And probably not without good reason, right? The French and British War of the time cost England a lot of money, and where was most of that, or a lot of that fought, was right here. However, our forefathers established a different method by which to address those problems, putting the people in as the sovereign so that they could decide those things.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think that those are really good points to think about on the 4th of July and Independence Day. And I think that and from my point of view, the 4 years of Joe Biden is more egregious than King George.
Way more.
You talk about COVID lockdowns.
Now, that's not in support of King George, by the way.
No, that's right. No, I would have.
I don't have a King George constituency.
I'm firmly on the side of George Washington, right? Definitely, I won't do the thing, but I guess I do the thing. Definitely the founding fathers, I'm George Washington. Chad Perkins has been Franklin. There's no doubt about it, but I'll take George Washington.
He needs a different pair of glasses.
He kind of reminds me a lot of, he's eccentric genius, right? So, yeah. So
that was a shout out to you, Chad. I know you're listening.
Yeah, good guy. Just had a baby. Yeah, and was happy for Chad and his family.
Go ahead.
No, but okay. So what did Joe Biden do at his turn? Lockdowns, COVID. The government controls the mean of production. Mm-hmm. You could have your papers to travel.
He quartered soldiers in people's houses. Oh no, wait, he didn't do that.
Well, in a sort of a sense. I mean, he took on types of emergency powers. But it's interesting too. Like, what makes even Joe Biden even worse is it wasn't even Joe Biden doing it. We know now that it was the administrative state.
It was AI.
Well, it was that circle, the orbit around the president, run amok, unfettered. So I think
probably worse than AI. Right?
Well, AI is a whole other subject. We can talk about that.
We'll get to that. That's the freedom and liberty thing too, by the way. Yeah.
Okay,
all right.
Good morning, JJ.
Hey, JJ.
Well, good morning.
Is this your first time coming on the Dave Weinbaum Show without Dave Weinbaum?
I believe so.
Well, I have that in common with you. It's my first time on the Dave Weinbaum Show without Dave Weinbaum too.
Well,
That's all right.
I have snuck in during the night before and pretended to be Dave Weinbaum, but other than that,
that was you.
You guys mentioned that the revolution was largely on account of taxes. I must add something to that. The British demanded that citizens of our not yet country house British soldiers in their residences. And that stuck in the craw of many of the colonial folks. So it was not only taxes. We're not only going to take your money, but we're going to stay in your house. Those were the two things that really triggered the revolution. Didn't mean to try to correct you, but I was listening, and that was an important piece.
Well, I'll add something too, and maybe get your thoughts on it. You can read the list of redresses in the Declaration itself.
The grievances, yes.
You can list, you can list the things they want to correct, but then you can also see the things that they want to correct from the British soldiers in the Bill of Rights itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
First Amendment, that the government shall not establish a religion like the Church of England, or abridge speech, right? You can assemble, you could form groups.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The Third Amendment, the quartering of soldiers. The Fourth Amendment, the generalized search warrants. So what happened was people would criticize the king. They would form groups. They'd have, small groups or clubs, and they would be seditious against the king. So the king would issue a generalized warrant. The soldiers would come into their home, and they would seize their firearms, right? And they would say, you're not allowed to say that. They'd take their muskets or their weapons from them, and they would go through and they would take their property and seize it. So the Bill of Rights itself is a list of stuff that happened to the colonists, right, in response to their criticism of the government, of the crown. And they just wanted to make these caveats that the American government was not allowed to do that list of things.
There we go.
Yeah, there was a popular, well, I don't know how popular it was. There was a TV show on here a few years back, the Sons of Liberty, which comes from the actual Sons of Liberty, and it was a show about that. But there's a really good segment in that about the quartering of soldiers in the homes, and it really helps you understand that Third Amendment. But that's how important they thought that was, that no government should be able to deprive you of your life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness and your treasure. And so they recognized that governments would have that ability, and the Third Amendment was put in there. People laugh about that today. It's like, well, we don't have British soldiers going to be quartering in our homes. Well, it wasn't about British soldiers, right? It was about anybody's soldiers. And but once again, goes right back to that thing about the people being the sovereign.
Well, understand, guys, I'm 277 years old, according to Dave. I lived through that. I was in my teens.
Are you still on Social Security at that age?
I am. I did have a visit by some fellows in a black van that said, "Are you J.J. Bradshaw? And show us your birth certificate."
Yeah,
mine was scrawled in cursive, on a piece of parchment, and those two fellows couldn't read cursive. So
you got lucky. Millennials, the millennials.
That was obviously Doge trying to see what waste, fraud, and abuse was coming your way. So.
I think these two were Democrats. They had that smell about them.
So some folks think my birth certificate was chiseled into stone somewhere, not because to make it permanent, that was the only writing media available at the time.
Yeah. That's what on a year to get his real ID.
Yeah, exactly. I had to get a truck to carry my birth certificate there.
Well, if you guys, you listen to Dave's show all the time, I normally start this thing grousing about our federal government. And I intend to do some of that this morning, if you will allow me.
Oh, my goodness. I don't know if we can put up with that or not.
What is more fitting on the 4th of July than to let you grouse about the federal government?
Oh, I think so.
I can't wait. Yeah.
There's a lot of folks around Rolla that pay close attention to local politics, state politics, county politics. I'm the guy that focuses on federal politics.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what Chip O'Neill said.
The most egregious things are happening at the federal level. The fact is, in our little burg of Rolla, your kids go to school with the politicians' kids. You go to the same church. There's some accountability there. You get to the county level, it's a little less. Get to the state level, it's a little less. And by the time you get to the elected representatives of the federal government, you really have no input at all. So I'm going to grouse a little bit. I don't know if you guys listen to podcasts or not, but the DNC, our buddies, the Democrat National Committee, decided that they would put together a podcast to counter the podcast of Joe Rogan, who, of course, is a conservative fellow. And they came up with this little stinker called the Daily Blueprint. If you've never listened to or watched the Daily Blueprint, by all means, take 10 or 15 minutes of your precious life and watch this ridiculous garbage that is being spit out by these folks. It is very much left-wing. Okay, June the 8th is when they started this thing. I watched a segment of it yesterday just to prep for this show. And this thing has a maximum of 9,000 viewers so far.
Wow.
On a podcast.
I'm shocked.
Which is practically nothing on a national level. Why? Because the folks that watch that, including me, held their nose and said, this is the most stinking piece of garbage I have ever watched. And I wasted 12 minutes of my life watching it. So tell you what, Joe Rogan, pretty popular, whole lot of viewers. This thing, the Daily Blueprint, not so much. Democrats, please, if you're going to try to beat up the conservatives and you're going to try to get popular, do something other than this liberal garbage. How about connecting with those of us who might be nearer to the middle? That's not me. I'm way right. Okay. The big, beautiful bill. You know that thing. That was all of the news for this week.
Right.
This thing finally passed the House 218 to 214 with 0 Democrats voting for it. That ought to tell you something. Mm-hmm. What that tells me is it's probably a pretty good bill, although I've not read anything but the executive summary. Against this, 2 Republicans, Thomas Massey and Brian Fitzpatrick, voted against this thing. Not surprising, I guess. I look for those folks to get primaried the next time around. Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries, who is not one of my favorite people, the man's a moron, spoke for 8 hours and 44 minutes. I did not listen to that, but he was trying to delay this bill as much as he could. This thing passed the Senate 51 to 50. Now, by next week, I will have read this thing because 940 pages takes a little time. And we'll have a report on how good or bad it might be. The Dems hate it, so there's a fair chance that I will like it. let's talk about James Carville for a minute. Now, you guys have heard me talk about James Carville before. For those that have been living under a rock, James Carville was the political advisor for Bill Clinton way back in the day. Pretty smart guy before he lost his mind. He's a lunatic at this point, but he's still a fairly smart lunatic. And I quote James Carville, "Trump will do anything he can to interfere with the midterm elections," end quote. James, look what your party did in the 2020 elections. Look what your party did. And then tell me that Trump will do anything.
Yeah, a lot of it was, a lot of the big, beautiful bill was necessary because of what happened over the last 4 years.
Indeed. Indeed. If you look at the egregious behavior of the federal government during the most disgusting Biden administration, a lot of this is to fix the problems that those clowns brought with them.
Yeah, the border especially.
And none of this was an accident. Anybody that says, "Oh my God, the Mayorkas was just inept," no. For those of you who in Duke, Missouri, Mayorkas was our border chief back then, and he opened the gates, let them on in. Do you think that was due to inept? No. The Biden administration says, "Thou shalt let in all these illegal aliens." Now, I look for, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but I look for some terrorist attacks in this country from sleeper cells that have came across that open border as a result of Joe Biden and his cabal. And that blame should be placed specifically at their feet. Biden and company, you did our country a serious disservice, and I think you ought to be tried for treason as a result of that.
I agree.
All right, a quickie on NATO. Now, NATO has stuck in my craw for a lot of years because the United States funded the majority of NATO for decades and decades, even though the subscribing countries had pledged to put 2% of their GDP in for their common defense. None of them did it. And nobody ever beat them up about it. The Bushes said a few things about it. Clinton even said some things about it, but nobody ever did anything about it. Donald J. Trump came in, beat these folks to a bloody pulp and said, "Guess what? We're not funding any more than we have to. You guys need to kick in your 2%. Or when you get invaded by the Russians or some other folks, we're going to look the other way."
Yeah.
Surprise. Donald J. Trump had whipped these folks into line, and some of them are actually pledged to put 5% of their GDP in the common defense by 2035.
Because they saw what was happening in Ukraine. And
yes, you folks are not immune to what happened to the Crimea and to Ukraine. So now, why is it that it takes a bombastic, pushy guy like Donald J. Trump, who I admire greatly, by the way? I don't particularly like him, but I do admire him. Why is it that in politics it takes some bombastic guy like this to get in your face to get something done? What about all these career diplomats that have been playing around with this thing for decades and not accomplishing anything?
Or JJ, more appropriately, a billionaire, because it's hard to buy off a billionaire, right?
Yeah, good luck on paying him off.
Yeah.
I don't know what you got. Maybe it's Russian hookers who peed in Obama's bed. I don't know. But still,
I wasn't supposed to laugh at that, was I? I'm sorry.
It's First Amendment on 4th of July. You can laugh whenever you want to.
Why, yeah. You'll find that I'm known to speak my mind, whether I'm right or not.
JJ, the older we get, the less our filter works, isn't that right?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Send me to Gitmo? Put me in prison? If you do that, you got to pay my medical bills. Our national debt will go up by billions of dollars. So you won't dare do that. Let's talk about Planned Parenthood for a minute. I noticed you got Joe Dalton coming on. He is my friend and very much pro-life, as am I. Our Congress actually grew a set of cojones and through the big, beautiful bill, defunded Planned Parenthood for a year. That's about 700 million. Well, some people say 500 million, others say 700 million.
Yeah.
SCOTUS, in the South Carolina ruling, said that the federal government cannot fund Planned Parenthood because they're not an authorized vendor.
Yeah.
Good. It's about time.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
It's
something that wouldn't have happened in the last 4 years, right?
Right. It didn't happen in the last 50 years.
The murdering of babies should not be legal anywhere on this earth. And how we got to the point where we made this legal, I will blame on Rhino Republicans, but certainly on the Democrats.
Well, it's in the top three things, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Life.
Bingo. Life's right on top of that. And if you look, you can take somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who is a disgusting, wretched individual, in my opinion, who is a Catholic, and says, yeah, it's okay to have abortion. Where did you come up from that? Show me in the Bible where that's okay. Where the hell did you come up with that?
There's a few passages that would disagree, right?
Can't wait to hear what Joe Dalton has to say about all of this.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, on the NATO thing, what you think that really, basically what we were doing, the United States, the people of the United States, was subsidizing the social welfare programs of Western Europe. But our politicians kind of ignored it because, well, they were making money going both directions, right? And because a lot of that involved defense contractors in the United States and us paying money for munitions that we were ended up giving to the Western Europeans and paying for the nuclear umbrella over Europe. So why should they waste their money when they could buy votes with their money? And so that's how we ended up with Western Europe looking like it was.
If you think about this, Dwight David Eisenhower, our president and former general, coined a phrase called the military-industrial complex. You remember that? It was late 1950s.
Absolutely.
And what the definition of that was, and everybody tried to deny it, was that the military and the arms manufacturers were hand in hand, skipping down the yellow brick road because they're all making money. And it is to their advantage to have nasty little wars here and there because we supply the armaments. NATO, I'm afraid, was a party to that as well because they benefited from that largesse and just didn't bother to pay the bill. That's all right. The United States will take care of that. No big sweat.
In fact, I just read a story, JJ, yesterday, which was shocking. I can't remember all the numbers on it, but it was talking about how much our supplies of munitions have been depleted from us giving away the Jaguar missiles and all of those other things. All of those have to be replaced, and then all of a sudden, it's like you said, the military-industrial complex, we figure out real quick what this is all about. We're not caring about what those weapons are doing in Ukraine and Russia. We only care about moving those through the system and who's paying for those munitions.
Well,
right?
it's
the people of the United States.
It's you and me. It is even more fundamental than that. You're mentioning weapon systems that are the high dollar stuff that take a long time to produce, that have a long lead time. And that's a valid point. No doubt about that. We've depleted a great deal of that. But it is more fundamental than that. I'm a shooter. And I can tell you that the supplies of civilian ammunition in this country are rather quickly depleting because we're diverting a lot of that manufacturing capability to resupplying the military. Perhaps that is the way it should be. Maybe not. The Democrats in particular, if you recall Operation Fast and Furious, that nasty little southern border bit of sending armaments to the cartels, that thing blew up in our face, and I'm glad that it did. But on a more fundamental level, we ship ammunition across that southern border by the pallet load.
Eric Holder should have been prosecuted for conspiracy to commit murder in that deal.
Eric Holder is a communist, and I don't know if he should have been prosecuted. Maybe he should have been assassinated. I don't know. I don't really care either way. But the folks that perpetrated this stuff, and we're talking Obama administration, although the Bidens were complicit in this as well, they're providing a disservice to those of us who are Second Amendment advocates, who like to go down to Walmart and buy a box of shells and go plink it in a paper target, law-abiding, responsible citizens, and they're cutting off our supply. If you recall, MasterCard and Visa a while back generated a code for armaments, whether that be guns, ammunition, reloading supplies, whatever, so that the federal government could track who was buying what. Got a note for you there, federales. Once the rest of us realized you were doing that, we paid cash for all that stuff. So your little party didn't do too well, not very effective.
JJ,
I got one last part of the shot.
Yeah, one last thing we got Joe here, so give me a few more thoughts, JJ.
One more thought for you. DOJ. Now, if you recall, during the Biden and Obama administrations, DOJ was seriously politicized and became a corrupt organization all unto itself. The new DOJ, though, is, I must say, is bright and shiny and doing their job fairly well. They just uncovered the largest healthcare fraud ever in the history of this country. 324 defendants, 96 of those are doctors, $14.6 billion in fraudulent claims through Medicare and Medicaid. This is big organized crime in our healthcare system. And the fact is, our healthcare system is badly broken and has been for years. Ask any doctor about the repayment schedule through Medicare. You'll get an earful.
Oh no, it's absolutely true. I'm on budget committee at the Capitol, and you talk about a shell game, an absolute shell game designed to reach into taxpayers' pockets. That's really all it's for.
And it's done on a wholesale basis.
Yeah.
We're not talking nickels and dimes. These folks are taking it by the billions.
It's 40% of our state budget. Medicaid alone, 40% of our entire state budget.
Well, if you recall, the federales kind of thrust that on us. Medicaid was a federal program and still is, but it's expected to be paid for by the states, which means you're at the whim of the federal government as to what percentage you're stuck with. It's badly done, and it was engineered to be badly done so that you as the consumer of this thing are the last person that they think of. Well, gentlemen, I am done for today. I will listen to the rest of your show. Be looking forward to talking with Dave on Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful Independence Day.
Have a great Independence Day, JJ. Thanks for talking to us. It's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a happy 4th.
Good day, gentlemen.
See you, JJ. Okay, so now we got Joe Dalton, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
Pregnancy Resource Center, Rolla. The first thing I want to do, I know you've done this time after time, but maybe for all of our benefit and everybody tuned in, tell us your story. Where are you from? How you ended up in Rolla? How you met Jane? Give us the backstory.
Gosh, that might take my whole half hour. So from St. Louis.
Safe to say your mom was pro-life.
Yeah. I'm the youngest of 8 kids.
Oh my goodness.
But and we have 8 living children, Jane and I do. But from St. Louis, Jane is not my first wife. We met in Springfield. Gosh, how many years ago was that? 35 years ago. So basically, she was working at a radio station. I was working for a seafood company.
A seafood company like Red Lobster or something?
No, I sold wholesale to grocery store chains.
Okay, cool.
So my nickname was Joe Fishman. So,
and that was in Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not Springfield, Illinois, or Springfield, Massachusetts, or Springfield, Nevada, or.
No, my specialty was fresh seafood. I traveled the country, but cool. I ended up. In fact, when I came to Rolla, many recognized me as Joe Fishman because we used to sell to stores in Rolla.
Yeah.
So it was. But at any rate, we met there. we had bought radio ads with her radio station that she was working for. And I, being the savvy marketing person, decided it would be a good idea to cook for the drive time DJs, and I was cooking shrimp and lobster for them.
Yeah.
So
wow.
That's when she and I met. But
that's awesome.
So yeah.
Okay, so you did that, and then how did you end up you were living in Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
What brought you to Rolla, Missouri?
That's a big leap. So we moved from Springfield back to St. Louis, and then we decided to move to Rolla just to get away from the city. We had all these little kids now. We wanted to move into the country. We hadn't picked Rolla. Rolla really picked us. But when we moved here, we were running a national pro-life organization called Pro-Life Communication. So it didn't matter where we lived. It just mattered that I had internet connection.
Yeah.
Okay. So we ended up moving to Rolla, and I sent out an email the next day saying, hey, we moved. This is our new address. I sent that to all the pro-life organizations we worked with around the country. And I received 2 calls that day, basically saying the same thing. This is providential. We've been begging God for a pro-life anchor to move to Rolla. You're it. I'm like, what? Why? And so known in the pro-life movement at that time, they explained to me really quickly, you just moved to a town with the Planned Parenthood and no pregnancy center. I'm like, okay, we can help with that. So we helped to start a pregnancy center. Now, I just envisioned myself working on the board, as a board member, a founding board member, not running it, but God has his ways of manipulating the things
of making what he wants to have happen with you.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start the pregnancy care center? What year was that?
2006 is when we formed the board of directors, and 2007 is when we opened, February of 2007.
And what's that like? What's it like coming here and you're and starting a nonprofit, and how do you tell me about that experience? That's a leap of faith, isn't it?
Oh yeah. The leap of faith actually happened before that. You're going to have to hear the rest of the story. So when we left the private sector and moved into nonprofit work, into pro-life work, was the big leap. And Jane and I were both making 6 figures at the time, and back then that was a lot. So we were very, very comfortable. And I was in between jobs. I was on the way back from Memphis to St. Louis from an interview on an airplane, and I received a calling from God. And it was a booming voice, and he told me exactly what to do. Yeah, people probably think I'm weird saying that.
No, I don't think so.
That happened.
What was tell me more about that. I'm here.
So I just took notes. I was like, nobody else was around me, and I took notes, and I would touch down, and I called Jane right on the phone. This is back when you had to use a payphone to do that, right? So I rushed to a payphone and tell her what God said. And he wanted us to start a national long-distance telephone company and donate the profits to pro-life. And that's, nothing close to what we did for a living. So her first question to me is what I drank on the airplane. And she wanted to know if I ate something bad, But I get home finally, and I show her my notebook. And first thing she noticed was that I spelled everything correctly. That wasn't me.
Because you're a bad speller.
Oh, really bad. Yeah. So I still am. Even industry terms I didn't understand the definition to, I spelled right. So that was a clue to her that, man, this could be real. So we ended up arguing back and forth with God for a while, and we ended up doing it. And
he usually wins that argument, by the way. I'm just suggesting that there.
Oh yeah, he won.
Just ask Paul.
Exactly.
or anybody.
So that's how I ended up in the pro-life movement. And then so we're having babies right and left at that time in our lives, and we go to these pro-life conventions, and they're designed for pregnancy center directors like myself to learn, to continuing education. And so we're going to these things, and I'm so bored because when all of the directors are in session, I'm sitting there at my booth doing nothing, right? So I start to go to these sessions to not be bored to tears. Then I'm thinking, God, why am I learning this stuff? I run a phone company. I'm learning how to run a pregnancy center. So for 6 years, I did this, and I sat through those sessions, and then lo and behold, he has me running a center. So it's like he trained me. Not only did he have his way, but he trained me before it ever happened.
Right. He equipped you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I usually get that big booming voice, but he's telling me not to do something, which unfortunately only works about 50% of the time. So,
okay. So you start the pregnancy care center.
Yeah.
Or resource center. Is that we use right nomenclature? And what's that like? Is it successful immediately? Do you have to build it? I mean, how do you and you're also countering the established Planned Parenthood in Rolla,
right?
Which aren't that many Planned Parenthood. In Missouri, there aren't that many consistent staying Planned Parenthoods in outstate Missouri. Rolla is one of them, you know? So what's that like? What's the culture like in Rolla? I mean, tell me about that experience. I'm kind of interested to hear.
Well, I had opposition at first, even from the Christian community, even from other nonprofits. We had one director of a former nonprofit that came at me basically saying, there's no need for this. You're wasting donors' money. There's limited resources, blah, blah, blah.
Because you're competing for the space of people donating. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So, so she claimed she looked at the state records and there was only 4 abortions for Phelps County the previous year. And I'm like, okay, so I said, let me ask you a question. If we do all this, we go through all this effort and we buy an ultrasound machine and we open the doors and we save one life, would that have been worth it? And it shut her up. Of course it's worth it. Each human
How do you
life,
say no to that, right?
Each human life is inestimable. And in our time since then, 4,125 babies have been saved in Rolla, which is mind-boggling to think about.
Yes. Yeah. That's and out of that bunch, so the calculation that I did was since Roe v. Wade, that there were 2,100 and some odd Einsteins that died, and then about 4 times that Elon Musk. So whenever you think about the impact that Roe v. Wade has had on life in general as time moves forward, you can't help but just shake your head and say, why did we do this?
Yeah, it'll go down in history as one of the worst things ever in history, the abortion stain.
Yeah, I do think that. I've thought that since I was a kid, that just like we look back hundreds of years ago, we go, how could people have done that? That one day we'll look back at this time period and we'll go, how could America have been so barbaric? And how could we have done that? And, but I think we shape history by our actions, right? What we do and what you write and what you say and what actions you take and what you stand for. I think that all, just like we were talking about how God equips people and uses them, that's how, he uses people to shape kind of what's going to happen. So I think what me and Don do in the legislature matters. What we speak of, stand for. What you and Jane do matters tremendously, because if there's a baby that it doesn't even matter what that child does with their life. It doesn't even matter what matters is that they're alive. It doesn't even matter what career they pursue. What matters is there's a person who's breathing, who's existing, who has life, and that there's a family that has that connection, and there's a person that gets a chance to live. And just like everybody said, that's incalculable. That's invaluable.
That's a child of God.
That's exactly right.
And those 4,125 children will likely have children of their own, and so on. So you think about the rift that would have been there if God had not called us to do this. So, right time, right place.
So Joe, that's, you don't just do pregnancy counseling. I visited you guys here a couple of years ago, and you were talking about, first of all, if you've never been to the Pregnancy Resource Center here in Rolla, oh my goodness, when I walked in, I was expecting something totally different. I think I mentioned that at the time. I was gape-jawed pretty much the whole time through, but then the icing on the cake is what you do after the baby is born. So can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Well, we provide support for that mom and that family for as long as they need it. And it's we've always had the attitude that no mountain is too high to climb. And God has plenty of money, so don't be afraid of money. Just know that he wants you to save that baby. So, probably the most expensive service we provide is housing. We have our maternity home called Bridges, and
but you also have that education program that goes along with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that has met my wife realizes that the brains of the outfit is her. But she, when we were getting ready to open the maternity home, a couple of fascinating things, because my whole goal was to buy the home and get it open, right? So I envisioned us throwing used furniture in there and opening the home, and she's like, no. So that no meant that I was committed to then 5 weeks of painting after that in the middle of the night. But what she said is that the women that are going to live here are the daughters of the creator of the universe, and they're going to be treated as such. And by the way, if you want me to teach them to take care of nice things, you got to give me nice things in the first place. And Mitch Piscini, he's probably listening, is the one that got stuck putting together all the IKEA furniture, and still curses about it. That was 8 years ago. But at any rate, that was the first step. And then while we're doing all this and we're waiting on the home to open, Jane was looking for curriculum. The curriculum she wanted was to take them to self-sufficiency. So these women are going to be homeless and they're going to need us. But by the time they leave, she wants them to be self-sufficient. Well, she searched and couldn't find that curriculum. And a little ticked off, she went at it and she created and wrote this curriculum herself. It's called My Ridiculously Amazing Life. And it has just been such a pleasure to watch it unfold, watch it work, to watch these women being emboldened. But it's based on the 7 core competencies of self-sufficiency. So it takes them one step at a time to that goal. So we first find out what their goal is. In the first couple of months, we're not going to find out that goal. If you ask a woman that's really been struggling, they're in that amygdala, that fight or flight mode. So if you ask them, what's your goal? They're going to say to eat dinner tonight.
Right. To live, yeah.
Yeah. So, but once we get them to dream, what did you want to be when you grew up, kind of thing. We'll find out what that goal is. And then she meets weekly with a life coach, and the coach will walk her through, well, in order to be a surgery technician, and they graduate making almost $50,000 right away, you're going to need to do this, this, and this. And, they calculate how many steps that is. And it's like, let's do 3 or 4 steps a week, and then we'll get there eventually. Mm-hmm. And, so we get them there. We don't even kick them out at that point. We never kick them out, but that's a different story. If they break the rules, they get kicked out. But basically, they got to be debt free. They got to be on their own 2 feet. They got to be ready to go and to launch. And that's been awesome to watch. Many women have been through the program. 4 of them are now homeowners for these alumni.
That's amazing.
Which is really cool to think about.
And so many of these ladies are like hyper successful afterwards. Tell us some of the career paths that these ladies have taken afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Zulema, she was our hardest one to get to dream. She was an actual dreamer. Because she wasn't a full citizen, she wasn't allowed to have FAFSA or any grants or anything. So it took her a while, but she's now an X-ray technician working in Kansas City, and she's making like a lot of money. Yeah.
An X-ray technician, right? Yeah. Not on subsidies, not on government subsidies, the actual taxpayer turning those into, and I don't want to make light of that, but I just want to point out that if we're going to have a social welfare system, then that has to be the goal, moving those folks out so that they can be independent. And without your program, most of these ladies wouldn't have had a shot at that. So
right.
I thank you very much for that.
Sort of have a dream of that program expanding across the state. And I've actually talked to the governor about it, and I talked to you guys about it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that would be cool, because the program is very deep. It's not very wide. So if it could be offered to more people, so.
Yeah, got to get it out there. I mean, it's people say, well, it's just not this one thing. It's not that one thing, but it is one of the things, right?
Right.
And so maybe it's not the solution for everybody, but it is the solution for a lot.
Amen.
Yeah, we'd love to see that. I think that what you're doing is an exemplar for what people can do around the state. And we talk about, how much that baby's life matters, and that person's life matters tremendously. But we're talking about what our duty is as people who are trying to follow God, trying to do the right thing, trying to serve, trying to help, and make sure that family, that mom and that baby have a bridge, right, to their best possible life. Mm-hmm. And I love that too, because we're all in that survival. I love you described that. It's not just moms who get in survival mode. All of us do. Or we're like, I just need to get through this. Like, I just need to find food. I just need to not break down today. Everybody has stuff like that. But then when you have time and when you have help, those hierarchy needs get met, and you go, what are my dreams? What's my purpose? What am I here on the earth doing? Right.
So Joe and I, we often face that question. You come from a family of 8 children. I come from a family of 10 kids, and sometimes you get sometimes parents and with those kind of groups, it can be number 8 or number 5 or whatever. My mom, you always knew you were in trouble when she would use all 3 of your names. Oh yeah, and that was bad news. That was along the Green Mile walk to the elm tree to, choose your weapon of destruction there. But the other thing too is that coming from a family that size instilled a lot of independence in us. I believe, at least it did for me, because mom wanted us out of the house, right? She had things to do, and so I spent most of my childhood playing with the rocks and the trees in our small acreage, and we sometimes forget that the dynamics of it doesn't actually matter what size your family is, but those big families, there's a lot of politics involved in that, isn't there, Joe?
Oh yeah. I'm the youngest though, so I was always considered the one that was spoiled to death.
Yeah. John, what's the B stand for in Donald B. Mayhew? What is your middle name?
Yeah, the Bad Dog. So
I've been telling people Bartholomew forever, but what is it really? What's your middle name?
So I'd rather not say. It was foisted on me in my youth before I had a choice. I'm not a big fan of my middle name.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Beatrice.
Like Harry S. Truman kind of thing. Okay,
it's a Harry S. Truman thing.
Okay, that's fair. All right, Joe. So you got some stuff you want to tell us about what's going on? Do you have more?
Well, first of all, we need. I'm sure you've already talked about the big beautiful bill.
Yeah,
but not much. But go ahead with it. With your stuff.
Planned Parenthood has been defunded in that beautiful bill.
Absolutely.
So we're talking $500 million was yanked from them. You guys know better than I, especially you, because you're an attorney. But will that get tied up in court? I don't know. But
it does to me. It probably will, but it doesn't matter to me. The Missouri legislature, and Don can attest this too. We've done how many different ways to cut off Planned Parenthood from Medicaid funds, from state funds. And somehow it seems like the Missouri Supreme Court always strikes down whatever our effort is and says those Medicaid dollars have to go to Planned Parenthood. But that doesn't mean that we literally will come back every year. We'll find another way to cut them off from funding. Yeah. And I'll just do that indefinitely.
We have I think the 4th most liberal Supreme Court of the 50 states in the Union.
Yeah. So Planned Parenthood, they act like they're I'll just criticize them for a little bit. They say, hey, we're a healthcare provider. They're not. Those healthcare services are farmed out. They're a abortion connector, and they're in the business of abortion. And the history of Planned Parenthood, how they developed, is one of the most nefarious, insidious histories too in the world. And so my argument, for various reasons, not just the fact that we shouldn't fund the murder of innocent children, but we shouldn't fund an organization like that has a background like that anyway. So there's lots of reasons why I think, it's illegal to have the taxpayer dollars go to Planned Parenthood, and it's immoral, and it's not what we should. So to me, the no taxpayer dollars should have been low-hanging fruit in policy. You don't have to be as pro-life as me to say that we shouldn't have taxpayer dollars funding it. Right. But the courts they always seem to have some way to reconstruct it and construe it. And that's just part of the battle of what we're there battling over, right? We're just going to come up with new ways to do it. And as long as we're there, we're going to keep trying to make sure that the tax, the money taken from the public at large is not going to fund the murder of children, but it's going to protect their lives. The exact opposite. And I think that, we talked about the building blocks of society. When we have a society that's based on that, protecting life, we can build all kinds of things around that. That's good. But yeah.
Well, in Trump's first term, they were on this bandwagon of saying that abortion is like less than 5% of their services. So therefore it's, we're not that bad. Right. So don't defund us. Well, Trump in his magical mind, in his business mind, goes to them and says, looky, it's only 5% of your business. Why don't you stop doing it? And I'll increase your money.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll increase your stuff. And
just quit doing it.
They backed away. Why did they back away? Because it's all of their business.
Actually, so if you look at their, so not-for-profits have to submit, I forget the number, it's some form to the federal government. If you look at that, even their money from government sources is a tiny part of their budget. And so they're getting donations from people. And why are they getting those donations? It's because they supply that service, right? Even though the government part of that funding is tiny. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I was shocked.
So it's last year their income was over $2 billion, just over $2 billion. And then 771 million is coming from reimbursements and from government. So it's a chunk of it, but they could certainly make it without it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean? Yeah.
So pregnancy centers don't get any funding. We're doing just fine.
Right. And you could see that's right. And you do the same thing. I mean, you provide medical services, you provide referrals to things people need, right? Mm-hmm. And so the difference is...
We'll actually make sure that they actually get those services, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I've been impressed about. I'm going to throw a little shout out to Jane, but once she grabs a hold of something, she doesn't turn loose of it. and you got to be thinking 3D chess if you're going to have a conversation with her, because she is hard to keep up with. So,
yeah. So the other thing I wanted to give you news about is this will give you the stats in front of you, but I'll read. So here's Phillips County Focus published this for me. So basically, in 2000, when Al Gore took credit for the abortion pill being approved, they did the clinical trials. They have to do a clinical trial, right? So they did that on 30,966 participants, and they really cherry pick those people when they're doing a trial anyway. They give them a health exam before they do it. So, so they came back that less than 0.5% experienced serious or adverse side effects. So then it was approved, right? Well, now we have new data, and it was published by the Ethics and Public Policy Center, but it's kind of under the heading of "Be careful what you wish for." Mm-hmm. They kept hammering these insurance companies to pay for the abortion pill. Well, they finally said yes. So now we have actual data from 865,727 patients showing that they paid for the pill, right? The insurance company did, and then their immediate care right after that. But what they came up with is 10.9% of these 865,000 or so, or 94,605 of them had adverse effects. Mm-hmm. Totally different.
Yeah.
10 times what they said it was. So we're talking about sepsis, hemorrhaging, infection within 45 days. Even hospitalization. And one of the interesting parts about this is it also included surgery. And what was that surgery? For an ectopic pregnancy. Back in the day, before Planned Parenthood, when we had a 72-hour waiting period here and we had the protections of that, when they went to Planned Parenthood, they had to go and they had to go meet a doctor first. They had to have an ultrasound. They had to confirm they were less than 10 weeks gestation. Well, now they just order it online and it shows up. Mm-hmm. That's my problem. That's the big problem. Mm-hmm. And it's not Planned Parenthood doing it. I'm convinced Planned Parenthood doesn't like these guys. Mm-hmm. They're like pirates. We don't know what country they're from or whatever, but they're shipping this into our homes. And, they could be 22 weeks. We don't know it and they're taking it. What does that do to them?
Right.
Now, if they happen to have an ectopic pregnancy and they take the abortion pill, well, guess what? That baby's protected inside the tube. So doesn't abort, and that woman goes along with life and ends up, she could die from that. So back when Planned Parenthood was controlled by your legislation, where they had to have the 72-hour waiting period, where they had to meet with a doctor, all those different things. Guess what? There was actually medical oversight, which was good. These women weren't dying anyway.
One would think a medical procedure would need medical oversight, right?
But now, you don't need that, apparently.
Yeah.
And the thing that upsets me most about buying these pills online is you go, and you and I can go and order them right now, and say you're a woman, and say you're 8 weeks along, lie through this thing, and it'll approve you. You're being asked medical questions, but the approval's like that, so a doctor didn't read it. And then when you're checking out at the very end, a blinking light will come up and say, "Wait a minute. If you buy another set of pills for next time, I'll give you $70 off."
Oh my goodness.
For next time. So not only we did not have medical oversight, but we have no way of tracking that one. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's no questionnaire associated with it at all. There's no data. Yeah.
So there we are. You're kick me off.
And so a word about those studies. Obviously, the drug companies, for actually scientific reasons, they like you were talking about, they go through a health screening to prove that they're in perfect health, because they don't want some comorbidity affecting the side effects of the drug. The problem with that is that the drug then is disseminated to the general population that may or may not be in perfect health. And so how does that skew that number? Well, you found out, right? That study right there proves how much that the study, the statistics, the justification for approving that, how that is skewed by the fact that we start with a population which would be able to tolerate some of the worst effects of that. Then when it's applied to the general population, well, we find out that real people, the average person out there, may or may not have a more adverse effect. Right. So that is an excellent point. Thank you for finding that out.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just some data for you to, next time you're arguing in front of the Democrats there, give them a little data. But go to the website too.
We call that debating.
Right, yeah.
Debating.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah. We argue and we debate.
Unless you're Phil Amato, of course, in which that's a kind of an inside joke.
I was asked to be on Governor Blunt's task force to study the effects of abortion on women. That's a few years back there.
Wow.
Right? So I'm on this task force, and I was blown away because at the end of every meeting we had to let the pro-abortion women get up and talk. And every week they had the same speech rehearsed, and they just bloviated and bloviated and bloviated. And I turned to the attorney that was running this thing, and I said, "Do we really have to sit here and listen to this? It's been the same thing for 3 weeks, right?"
Right.
And so back then there was this search engine that basically it told the world who you are based on articles that were written about you. So you would find Joe Dalton on this. I'll remember the name of the engine in a minute. And you would find me, and it would say board member, it would say founder, all these different titles. And then it was egregiously rude member.
Oh my goodness.
So you click on that link, and it takes you to this article by Planned Parenthood USA or Pro-Choice USA or whatever. And I was like, well, that's a badge of honor. So
yes,
I was egregiously rude.
Egregiously rude.
Well,
I wonder what they would apply to me. Ludicrously rude. What's worse than egregiously?
Yeah, all your enemies tell you what you stood for. What you did. So
Zoom info was the thing.
Yeah, and of course everybody says that Trump is really rude. That's why some people don't like him. He's so rude. I mean, so
right.
Come on.
Well, before you go, what else you want to tell us?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We don't get any state funding. Did you know that? Or federal funding. We get tax credits though. But
yeah, hey, we passed a little something as a little bit of an improvement in House Bill 121. So
has it been signed?
Well, it's not signed yet, but I can't predict anything that happens in state government. So, but what it did was it took that tax credit and changed it from 50 to $100,000. So you can take the tax credit up to $100,000 now, and it obviously extended the sunset on it also at the same time. So that's,
but it's not going to be 100%. It's still 70%.
Same as it was. But it increased those limits. Now, originally, we took it to 100% on the House side, but once it got over to the Senate side, well, you know what happens when it gets over to the Senate side.
So they kicked it back to 70, but we get to...
They left that, they took that part out, but increased the amount from $50,000 to $100,000. You could take in 1 year. So that should be a pretty good deal.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Something good.
Yeah.
So you got a walk for life coming up.
Yeah. So our Walk for Life is coming up September 6th, 2025, Lions Club Park, 10 a.m. We want you to be a part of this. It's a really fun event. Here, you can hold it up there. So last year we had almost 400 people there, but basically, if you think about it, having that many people in one place with the same T-shirt that says "I'm glad you were born." It's just really cool to have that. Mm-hmm. But it's a fundraiser. So what we ask people to do is to either walk with us or run with us, and to ask people to support them. So you go to your friends and family and say, "Hey, I'm walking in the Walk for Life. Can you sponsor me?" And you'd be surprised. Most of them will say yes. But really, most of the donations come online when you register for this event. It's at supportmyprc.com. And then click on the Walk for Life thing, supportmyprc.com, and when you register, your very own webpage is created for you. So you can actually share that on social media and via email, asking people to sponsor you. But here's the thing. It costs us about $1,000 to save a baby. You sit there and you say you're pro-life, but do you know how to save a baby today? I'm giving you the answer to that. This is how to save a baby today. We've been around and around. We have all these corporate sponsors that are giving us all these gifts to give to our top walkers, which is very helpful. So when you raise $1,000, you get to pick a gift. There's a JBL speaker and a Yeti bottle or whatever, water bottle, or things like that. But you're also inducted to a very exclusive club called Joe's Dinner Club. And that is a celebration of a successful Walk for Life. So we meet at Colton Steakhouse. And if you can imagine the group, last time we had 85 people there. And everybody in that room raised enough to save a baby, at least. So that's a pretty awesome
85
group.
babies.
Awesome group to be around. You want to hang with that group. So,
absolutely.
So I'm giving you that opportunity as well. But now, if you can't walk or not from around here, that's great. We ask that you go to Support My PRC and find that link and click on it and donate, sponsor one of the walkers or runners that are already there. So you're going to be helping us in that way.
And say that again, Joe. What is the website?
Supportmyprc.com. Supportmyprc.com.
And I also want to make note of the sponsors at the bottom of this sheet, because obviously they're putting their money where their mouth is and being sponsors. And so I feel like we also need to make sure that when we have a need for doing business, we do business with these people.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And they're, they're taking a risk of ticking off pro-choice people by being on there. And they don't care.
These are local establishments to the Rolla, Phelps County area. And like you said, Joe, they're taking a stand. They're putting their name right there. Right. This is what they're supporting. That's major.
McDonald's is there too.
Yeah, and these are prominent names here.
And also, I'm going through this list. There's several of these that I've been doing business with regularly, and it warms my heart to know that I've been going through supporting these local businesses that have also been supporting Pregnancy Resource Center. So that's really good. So that will renew my efforts, and I'm going to encourage those out there who are not on this list. Maybe you want to get on this list, right?
Yeah, and if you do, apparently you could donate
100,000.
No, 200,000. Because if you increase the tax credit to 100,000, you could donate up to $200,000 and get that tax credit.
Yeah. Doesn't hurt to mention that more than once. Excellent.
Well, that's completely awesome, Joe. Thank you for coming by and visiting with us.
It's the Bill and Don Show.
I think, well, it usually is in Jeff City.
Sounds a little bit like the Everly Brothers, right? Bill and Don, Phil and Don.
No, what you do matters, and we can't thank you and Jane enough. And we're here to support you and just let us know what else we can do. And thankful to everybody who's helping save people's lives. That means a lot. So, and I'm glad you're born, Joe.
I'm glad you were born.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, if you want to come by the walk yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Right.
Last year was the first one I'd missed. And I couldn't get in the schedule, but
and
apologize
if your campaign managers want to have a booth, I'll give them a booth.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, cool. I'll be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, appreciate that. Yeah.
That'd be fun. I'll put you right next to each other.
Yeah, that would be
cool.
good.
Yeah, cool.
I have plenty of rubber bands. Thanks for stopping by, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Have a good day. All right, JP, do we take a commercial break? Yeah, okay, let's do a commercial break.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Honey, what are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing?
It looks like you're filling up a swimming pool.
Yep, I'm filling up a swimming pool.
In our living room?
How else am I going to watch the game and stay cool?
If your AC is on the fritz, call Hartley's Climate Control. Hartley's is the area's best in HVAC repairs, installs, and maintenance. Knowledgeable, honest, and dependable. Serving Rolla and the surrounding areas for commercial or residential needs. Hartley's Climate Control. Community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy, but also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender, all one word. But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is 2 words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day. Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
At your locally owned Price Chopper, our standards are high because we know yours are. See for yourself what an incredible fresh selection of grocery items we have in store. Talk to our expert meat associates about what you're looking for. They're happy to meet any special requests like custom cuts, or see our expert produce associates on how to pick out the best fruits and vegetables. Quality in the deli means fresh, full flavor, and always delicious. If you're craving fresh baked goodness, we have that too. You can expect the best selection and the best value while interacting with our friendly and knowledgeable employees. You can find what you're looking for fast and easily at the best prices at Price Chopper. Fresh savings every day. A-Car Real Estate, where experience matters. 532 million sold since 2003, the #1 sales volume in Phelps County. As a client for decades, I can say they are the best in mid-Missouri. Call 573-368-7355. That's 573-368-7355 for the best real estate experience you'll ever have. Gotta reach 'em, see it right now. Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
At Town & Country Bank, we've got all the perks of a national bank, like online banking, quick loan approval, and you can deposit your check from your phone. But that's not why our customers love us. They love us because we still offer hometown customer service. Stop by one of our 2 Rolla locations and let our friendly team remind you how special hometown banking can be. We're locally owned and we'll take the time to understand your needs. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Okay, we're back after that commercial break.
Back.
Yeah,
wow, that is so impressive.
You know, the thing about the shows you don't realize is it goes by real fast if you're the one hosting the show. It seems like 3 hours would go by slow.
Yeah,
but it just flies by, really.
Well, now kind of depends on who you are, right? And so I think my wife tells me I talk in my sleep, so it's pretty easy for me.
What do you say?
Well, probably things that make a lot more sense than when I'm awake. But
well, I'm kind of trying to recap some things JJ said, right, about like the national politics, about NATO.
Oh yeah,
the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about in 1960 in his farewell speech. What he was saying is, once you tie a financial interest to something, which I want to circle back to why I think it's relevant in a second.
Right.
Those people's, their financial interest starts to shape the U.S. policy.
Right.
Instead of the interest of the American people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think was happening in Ukraine for sure, is that there are defense industrial partners and contractors who want to sell more ammunition, who profit off war. And that's definitely affecting, nobody can argue it's not affecting our policy in Ukraine. But one thing to add is that it's not just defense industry. It's also the pharmaceutical and medical industry, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's that people make money off of keeping people sick and keeping people on medicine. And that's shaping our national policy just as much as well. Okay, sure.
No, absolutely. That anytime you include the profit motive, there will be people who try to take advantage of it nefariously. And, I love your analysis there on that. There's money in selling munitions. There's a lot of money in selling munitions. Yeah. The politicians are making those decisions, and we find out later that they're connected in some way to some of that, and which was exactly what Eisenhower was warning us about. That is the military-industrial complex.
Right.
That is the sum total of it, which takes us back to the Constitution. The civilians, the military is subject to civilian
control. That's right.
Control, which was totally different than any other country, and most of them since then. Go ahead.
Now, this clip I'm going to play doesn't talk about the military, but it talks about healthcare and why there is a complex when it comes to that. And I think it's a great way to kind of explain it.
So with 2,000 beds, right? Okay. We want to know out of the 31 days this month times 2,000 beds, that's 60,000 times that these beds could have been rented. How many times were they rented? We were at 89%. Can we get it to 92%? We need people staying in our hotel to make money. The business model of a hotel isn't to have only 10% of the rooms being used. So what's the business model of hospitals?
I must be totally different, right?
Right. So we need those beds to be filled. And by the way, do you know what's the number one industry of the most money they did last year? Energy, oil. You know, that's only $500 billion. You know what's number one? Hospitals. Yeah. $1.5 trillion. Hospital models, I need sick people. Big pharma models, I need new diagnosis. A contractor's model, military contractor, I need war. Mainstream media, what do I need? Controversy, conflict, chaos. When you actually look at the business model of what these guys are doing, they need chaos and problems to keep making money.
I want to make a way to make America healthy again, too. Start with that. So Eisenhower makes his warning about the military-industrial complex as part of his farewell speech. And it's clear, and this is post-World War II, arguably when the national security and the defense security state is at its peak, right, in the 1950s, when it's most prestigious in American history. And Eisenhower's point is that if people make money off war, they're going to make sure there's more war. They're going to make sure there's more conflict because there's billions and billions to be made. And that's a lot. When you're getting to the billions, which Don and I can tell you this, once you start crossing billion-dollar industries, they get pretty upset. Yep. They've been upset at both of us before. But so, and the reason why that's this interesting segue to me is because I heard the interviews with RFK Jr. about when his uncle was assassinated, John F. Kennedy, and he's at home and his dad's with the CIA. His dad, Robert F. Kennedy's with the CIA director, asking, "Did you guys do this? What's your involvement in this?" And then his own dad being assassinated, and the Kennedy brothers had this viewpoint that there were these entities that would just have perpetual wars and make money. Well, RFK is one, and so RFK is the one who makes that point today about our pharmaceutical and healthcare industry, that there's a lot of money to be made in chemotherapy. There's a lot of money made in abortion. There's a lot of money to be made in making sure that hospital workers all have the flu shot. Do you know why hospital workers have to have the flu shot? Because CMS money reimbursed to that hospital is contingent upon whether or not they have a flu shot requirement in the hospital. So how did that happen? Well, there's a company that makes that shot. And they somehow got it into the federal policy that if the healthcare provider wants the money, same way with the Army too. Why is there a flu shot requirement in the Army? It's because somehow along the line, Pfizer got it to be a requirement, a legal requirement, that everybody has to take. This is a flu shot. So then what do you think would happen when the COVID shot came around?
Right.
The mRNA shots, right? That there's a company that created something. In the case of mRNA, since we got time, I'll break it down a little bit. Messenger RNA is a genetic strand of genetic code that instructs your cells to do something. That's what messenger RNA is. Messenger RNA exists.
Changes your DNA.
It instructs your DNA, your cells to express themselves in a certain way. So human beings have messenger RNA naturally that we produce, and
T-cell responses.
Yeah, it makes our body do certain things. Well, in the case of the COVID shot, messenger RNA instructed the body to produce the spike protein. It made your cells make the spike protein. And the theory on that, why they thought it would be effective, is that your body would produce antibodies to then respond to the spike protein that was found in the COVID virus. But there's a lot of problems with that. One is it's entirely experimental. Two is that how your body reacts to the spike protein is all kinds of ways that we don't know. It could land in your heart and cause heart inflammation. It could change the way that your T cells are developed, your immunity. It can cause all kinds of issues, right? It causes clotting in the blood, this strange blood clotting. We found that out from autopsies. Yep. There's all these effects, right? But you had a few companies, Moderna, Pfizer. They had this technology. They coded it for a spike protein production. Then they made everybody in the country take it without any trial studies, without ever. They said, if you want a job, if you want to be in the military, if you want to travel, if you want to fly on an airplane, they got it as extreme as they could possibly get. Everybody has to take it. And it was a disaster. There are a lot of people that have adverse health effects. We know that a lot of people had strokes and heart attacks from it, who developed cancer, right? So, that's just kind of the example we're talking about. And when you go fight for something like this in the legislature, which we have, which our compatriots have, it just runs into massive resistance because there's so much money in the pharmaceutical industry.
And I'm glad you brought that up. And we often wonder why that happens. But, what I was talking about earlier, that Medicaid forms 40% of our entire state budget, 40% of our entire state budget. I can't say that enough. And just imagine all 50 states in the union, it got to be somewhere in that same category, right? And what you find out real quick, that being on budget committee, is that Well, there's not a whole lot of those Medicaid dollars that are spent on smoking cessation or drug treatment or weight loss. Preventative type things. And the only conclusion you can draw from that is that, well, there's a lot more money in cancer surgery than there is in smoking cessation programs. Now, I will give a shout out to our current director of Mo Health Net, which is our version of the Medicaid program here in Missouri. Todd Richardson is trying to change that trajectory. It is a shame that early on in my freshman term, that Mo Health Net wanted two pieces of legislation, but neither one of them, they were fairly innocuous, but would put some reduce some of the increases in Medicaid spending in the state of Missouri, and we couldn't get that out of either one of those bills out of a Republican-controlled budget committee. And why is that? And because there was a lot of pressure put on members of that committee, and so we end up seeing these out of control costs. Well, fortunately, that Todd had come up with a program as I was proposing some legislation that would try to affect that trajectory, because I could just see this thing just exponentially multiplying every year. And so he goes, well, he says, we're coming up with a new program that has more of those healthcare outcomes. And which is what I was shooting for, was that, hey, if we're going to pay you all this money, there should be some result at the end of it, right? Why are people getting sicker, to your point earlier? Yeah. And what RFK was saying is, why we're spending all this money and people are getting sicker.
We spend the most money and we have the sickest children in the world. And I think what happened with COVID was a lot of people were saw what they were being told on TV. They saw what some doctors were telling them. Mm-hmm. They saw what was being shoved down their throat. And then they saw, like you and I saw, constituents walking up to me. I can't tell you. This is also one of the eye-opening experiences of COVID. And so whatever people want to rewrite my Wikipedia page about or write about me being a kook, they can't take away what I know happened.
I didn't use the word kook when I made that amendment to your Wikipedia.
Here's what happened during the vaccine mandate. And as a state representative, I'm one of the few people who are in this position. I'd walk down the sidewalk, and somebody walk up and say, my 35-year-old husband had a heart attack. Mm-hmm. My 28-year-old husband had a stroke.
Right.
And I go, that's weird, crazy. Mm-hmm. And then I turn around, another person would say that. Mm-hmm. Over and over again, people would walk up and they would say, now he has heart problems. Mm-hmm. And they don't know each other. The only person they all know is me, because I'm their state rep.
Right.
And so that would happen over and over again. And I'd hear this other health outcome happened. And it was just like constant. You talk, I'm going to get a cough drop.
Yeah. Okay. So now I get to talk. So thank you.
Yeah, good. It's this perfect. Nope. My voice is, nope.
That's what I put in your coffee, Bill.
Window missed. My voice is back. So like, it was just something that I knew for a fact was happening. People are calling saying, my husband has these blood clots, this stroke.
Yeah.
And so I know, and you could go to the legislature, and the Democrats would go, perfectly safe, Right. I believe in science, which I believe in science is the most ludicrous phrase in the world. Mm-hmm. You don't believe in science.
Right.
Science is asking questions.
Right.
Science is being skeptical. You don't believe in science.
Right.
Right. Science is when you're going, what do we not know?
No, that's the way science used to be, Bill.
No, right. You're right. Because I like science. I used to want to be a scientist.
Yes.
Science is not, I believe something. Science is, what do I not know? And I ask questions about it.
Yeah. I have been suspicious of the government for sometimes. I remember as a kid thinking it'd be easy for somebody to control the government. I remember having this thought even as a child. And it's just, I've always kept this, I won't say a pessimist, but just kind of watching the tea leaves, so to speak, and just kind of watching things play out. And when COVID hit, I was already, my antennas up. Okay, this is not what they're saying it is, but okay, it's got people freaked out. We're just going to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And my wife, who is not nearly as political, she's conservative, but she's not as politically involved as I am, obviously. She's a 20-year RN, so she knows medicine.
Oh, yeah.
She knows medical science. And when Fauci got up there in his white coat and says, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to social distance, and we're going to do all this stuff and blah, blah, because medical science says this is what we should do. She goes, no, it's not. That's the exact opposite of what medical science has taught us to do all this time.
Right.
She goes, the best thing is get immunity. And you get immunity by getting exposed to it and let your body fight it off. And it was like they went against everything they had taught us. And when she said that, I went, uh-oh. we got a problem.
Yeah, they expected us to forget the high school biology that we were all taught. Suddenly, that doesn't count anymore, and so I love the way you were talking about that. A lot of us, we joked a lot prior to COVID. We joked about conspiracy theories and tinfoil hats and all that stuff. Well, what we got to finding out was that through a series of things during that period, that the conspiracy theories were true.
Yeah.
And so there's, while the little green man argument is still out there, right? It's okay. The reality is that many of what we were told were conspiracy theories turned out to be true. And not the least of which is ivermectin.
Yeah. So one of the consequences of COVID is we question things, right? We don't trust the establishment or science, or not science, but like what's being told to us. So ivermectin is one of the things that only came to the public consciousness, which first came during COVID, right? And the media land-based it as like horse dewormer, animal, whatever. But there's a human-approved ivermectin. Yep. And I first learned about ivermectin when we went down to, I think it was a Reawaken America Tour affiliate. It was in Springfield, Missouri. And I was down there with Senator Curtis Trent, actually. And there were a line of nurses and doctors who came up, and this is actually the first time I even really heard about it. They lined up, and they were talking to me because they had told them that I was going to file a no COVID vaccine mandate bill. And so this is like December 2021. Yep. And they like literally made a line. Never forget it. And the next doctor came up and told his story. And he was like, I could lose my medical license for telling you this. Mm-hmm. And the nurse came up and told their story. And then they started to say, and we're not allowed to prescribe people ivermectin. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what is ivermectin? They were like, well, if you call it in and you say it's for COVID, they'll cancel the order.
Yeah.
So I have to call in and say, you have these worms or something. Right. Or I have to say whatever. And then they'll let it be prescribed. And they're like, we have to lie or they won't approve it anymore. But I'm the doctor and I know what this person needs. They need this antiviral, anti-parasitic, serum basically.
Well, so in honor of Dave not being here, and I'm sorry, Lisa, because I'm going to go ahead and play. This is Dave's song that he recorded about this very topic.
Ivermectin, I take it by the pill. Ivermectin, the pandemic it will chill. Ivermectin, I let it take its course. Ivermectin, now I'm neighing like a horse.
So go ahead. Yeah, please talk about it.
Well, I am, this is not scientific, but I'm convinced that hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin saved my life when I got the Delta version of that. And a little bit of story behind that, which still upsets me to this day, is that my wife and I both were sick. And so we went to the doctor, our local doctor, COMC, by the way, which is a federally qualified clinic and has an office over in Rolla, and over in Richland, Missouri. And we went in, and the lady who treated us said, well, you got here just in time. We'll give you this hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. But she said, I'm a little bit worried about the pneumonia that you have. And so here's what I want you to do. If your oxygen falls below 90, you need to go to the hospital and get a breathing steroid. Yep. She said that clears it up and you will have no problem. And so, as a matter of fact, that's what happened. My wife got down to about 85, and I was at 90, practically overnight. So we went to the hospital just thinking we'd go in, and so as it turns out, we were separated. One of us went in one doctor, and my wife went into the other doctor. So I get in there, and the doctor says, "Well, are you taking anything for this?" And I said, "Yeah, I got prescribed ivermectin hydroxychloroquine." And he goes, "Well," he said, "that's what I would have given you." He said, you're not bad off right now. He said, I'll get you this breathing steroid. This will clear up in a day or two and you'll be fine. And he said, you will carry this cough on, but for a while. But he said, that's a good thing. But he goes, not a problem. He took a chest x-ray and gave me the breathing steroid. And I go out and my wife's already in the waiting room. And I said, wow, how did you get through so quick? And she goes, no sooner than I said I wasn't vaccinated, he couldn't get me out of the room quick enough. And I said, so you didn't get the breathing steroid?
Yeah.
And she said, no, she wouldn't give it to me.
It's asinine.
And well, now that's two doctors in the same hospital, right?
Yeah.
Totally different approaches. So I went back to the desk and I said, I want my wife to go see that guy.
Right.
And I was told at the desk, well, you can't do that. You've already seen a doctor. He's already made a diagnosis. You have to leave. And so we did. And so I went to another hospital, and I don't think I was gruff, but I was. There was an imperative in my voice.
Sure.
Right. And so I insisted that she get the breathing steroid. Otherwise, within a day or two, she would have been on a ventilator. And so right there, what does that tell you? So we're assuming they were both equally trained. You know what the biggest difference between those two is? The doctor I had, mid to late 50s guy. Yeah. The doctor she had was, I don't know, 10 minutes out of medical school or something. And so some more conspiracy theory stuff is that college educated folks back in the 70s and the 80s, totally different mindset than those educated now. So.
I don't think doctors are taught science as much as they were before, and taught biology and anatomy as much as they were before.
I got into an argument with a family member of mine who it's a cousin. She's very liberal in her thinking and all that. And when COVID hit, we were talking at a family thing, and I said, yeah, I'm not vaccinated. She goes, well, you can't do that. You have to get vaccinated. I said, why? I said, I'm making a choice for myself. I don't trust it. I'm not going to do it. She goes,
yeah,
you got to get that shot to protect me. I said, whoa.
You got it.
Didn't you get one? That's what that's supposed to do for you.
Right.
I don't need a shot to protect you. I'm choosing to get a shot not to protect myself.
Yeah.
If you want to get to protect you, you have the freedom to do so. I also have the freedom to say, I'm not going to.
Right.
It really did change the way we think about stuff. I mean,
yeah.
And right, exactly. It doesn't keep you from getting it. It didn't keep you from spreading it.
No.
People who died with the COVID vaccine, they died after taking it. They got real bad sick. They got it 3 or 4. I remember the legislature seemed like everybody who was triple vaccinated.
Right.
They kept getting COVID every couple of weeks.
Right.
I still know people at work today within the last 2 weeks who are vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They were out all of a sudden.
It's real sick.
They got COVID.
They all got real sick.
And so that's what's been borne out by Senator Johnson. All the research that he's done, it's been borne out that actually taking it interfered with your body's natural process.
Right.
It's not like the Jonas Salk vaccines and all of those where it exposed you to the dead virus so that you would get that T cell response so that your body would fight that off. This thing was interfering with your body's ability to do that. So as soon as the quote unquote effects, what little there was, would wear off, well, then it re-exposed you to that possibility. But now there are studies out there saying now it injured your T cell response so much now that people are getting cancers that no one would ever get unless their immune system had been depressed, like AIDS victims and people like that. And so this thing actually was another form of those immune deficiency syndromes that people get. And it was done intentionally.
So the funny thing was about 2 years ago, you're supposed to do the annual checkup with the doctor and all that. And with mine, I typically get lab work done. And so 2 years ago, I told my doctor, I said, hey, let's get this request in. Here's what I'm going to check you for, all the usual stuff, cholesterol, all this kind of different stuff. And I said, hey, can you test for COVID antibodies? She said, yeah. I said, I want that. Okay, not a problem. So I went, had lab work done, meet with her 2 weeks later where she has a full slate of report and she's going over stuff one by one. And she gets to the COVID. And she looks at me and she goes, you're not vaccinated? I said, nope. Not even one time? Nope. She goes, well, that's interesting because you have twice the amount of antibodies somebody vaccinated has.
Right.
She goes, which means you were exposed to it at some point. Your body fought off.
And
you have immunity.
Right.
You cannot, she said, I will write this up. You cannot get the shot because you will get sick. You don't need it.
Right.
The
That's
most
science. Yeah.
The most interesting statistics, and it was early on. And most people just gloss over this and don't pay any attention to it, but it is very instructive on the what happened after that. And so they were claiming an efficacy of about 85%, 85 to 90%, I believe is what they said. You get the shot, you're not going to get COVID. Well, as it turns out, that 85% of the people who contracted COVID wouldn't even know they had it.
Right.
Okay, so was the shot actually providing the efficacy? Right. And so we say, well, scientifically, somebody has looked at this and done a scientific analysis. But what COVID taught us was there was no science in it anywhere. It was about selling the shot.
Profit in politics.
Yeah. And when they used the American people as a test bed for this new device called mRNA. Now, what better test bed can you have than 275 million people out there, because you could collect a lot of data from that. And they did. Yep. And the only problem is that the data they collected would tend to think that maybe somebody needs to be held accountable. And there is the real problem here is that no one's being held accountable. And Fauci is, at the very least, guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. And my first cousin was one of those.
Yep. No, and so here's the other thing too, is you're talking about collecting data on us. Was the other data they're collecting is to see how many people, how many of us would not comply with just being told you have to do this? Because I actually risk losing my employment.
Same.
Over it.
Yeah, no, to touch on all that one by one, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So when I testified, I had the COVID bill and committee. I testified there's an NIH study that people that had SARS in 2003, 17 years later, their T cells from SARS were cross-reactive with the COVID virus, which meant, and so SARS is more genetically dissimilar than all variations of COVID, were from each other. So there are at least some people that had immunity 17 years later after the people who survived SARS contracting it. So there's a type of natural immunity that people can have. Mm-hmm. There was no reason to take the COVID, and that's like scientific, right?
Well, I mean, the biology is really actually pretty simple, and it's what we were taught in high school, is that no virus wants to kill the host. So it's usually the first or the second version that does most of the damage, and then every mutation after that, it fades out. It's not that it's not present, but survive. It's not going to affect you, because just like every other living organism, survival is the key, right? Procreation is the key. That's the survival of the thing. If the host dies, you can't procreate.
Yeah, the most lethal version of the virus dies out.
Yeah,
all like the Spanish flu.
Yeah,
and Ebola's a bad example because it's super lethal, right? But hemorrhagic fevers, viruses like that. Okay, so here's another point. So mRNA, it had these terrible effects on all these people who took the COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. But you remember in 2023. And I do want to give a shout out to Holly and talk about the work that Holly did too.
Yeah, let's do it.
If we don't get to that, we'd be remiss to do it.
Yeah.
But in 2023, we had this discussion. We're like, hey, and it was Holly's bill, and I hope she files it, and I know eventually that we're going to pass it because it's the frontline bioethics issue of our time. That the gene therapy techniques, someone couldn't modify your genes, couldn't use gene therapy on you without your consent. That was the general idea. Now, whether that's through a shot, whether that's through pitting. We're not talking about genetically modified organisms, so that's a whole other example, but putting something in your food supply that'll modify you genetically, creating that vector, right? People should have consent on it. That was the issue. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of said, well, mRNA is going to be everywhere. We think all the vaccines are going to become mRNA vaccines. And in January 2023, we were told, no, it's crazy. You guys are ridiculous. Well, by the end of that session, we'd start putting mRNA amendments on different bills. Mm-hmm. And that was then kind of all heck broke loose. And then we were told, well, that's the technology. All things are going to be mRNA because it's cheap to manufacture. It doesn't require this. It's faster to manufacture because if you use an attenuated or dead virus, right, like the classic, and the vaccines of today are not the vaccines of 50 years ago or 60 years ago. But if you take some time to curate that and to cultivate it, right, I don't have to do that to mRNA. I can go into an AI program. I can say, this is what I want this protein response to be, create a genetic code that'll deliver this message to the cells. That computer program will create it. And then I can genetically engineer a sequence, which mRNA is genetic material, right? It's genetic. Mm-hmm. It's these peptides talking to other peptides. They link and they cause a response. That's how it tells it what to do, right? So I could do that. And so eventually all vaccines will be vaccines where genetic instructions are being conferred to you for your body to produce something. And even Elon Musk talked about that. You could have mRNA change your eye color. You could have it change your hair color, your skin color. You could have it make it taller. It could tell your body to do all kinds of stuff.
It could you could create a bug that would kill a specific person or family. Yeah. Right?
You absolutely could. So the only point we are making, and and we want to talk about Holly's work on ivermectin too, but kudos to her for coming in and fighting that fight, and just in the informed consent and the health freedom movement, how critically important that she is and was and remains to be. But the only point we were making was that if you can't, it's saying you can't make that kind of stuff. You just have to tell people you're doing it to them. And that seems like a pretty simple proposition that they need consent.
Well, didn't she also have the bill, or was it including that same legislation? I can't remember now, that allowed farmers to be able to label their meat mRNA free.
Yeah.
And there was a resistance to that. We couldn't get that out of even a House committee. Now, all it was a labeling thing. If you were mRNA free, you get to put a label on your meat that said mRNA free. It seems pretty simple, right? Why wouldn't meat producers all through the entire spectrum be championing that, right? And I think, and Bill, you can probably speak to this a little bit better, but what the comment was, as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, was that that those who were in the meat industry were saying, well, we don't do it now, but we don't want to take away that tool should we need to in the future. And so that's scary, right? Because that means that somebody is contemplating exactly what Bill just said. And we have all seen Frankenstein, right? What happens, the unintended consequences of science run amok. And that it's no truer than something I'm going to say it, Bill. Glyphosate.
Oh yeah, look it up with glyphosate. Nick.
Oh my goodness,
we don't have time. I'll talk about all this stuff. Yeah,
but the reality is that I was just recently in a soybean field, and I took pictures of this because it impressed me so much. This was in the spring. Every single thing around this field was green. Every single thing, except what was in this field. Now, in this field was just brown dirt. I took a shovel and I turned a scoop of dirt. There was absolutely nothing living in that soil, no earthworms, no bugs of any kind. However, on the margins of this field, there was these green plants growing up through this thing. And as it turns out, glyphosate is creating glyphosate tolerant weeds. And so what is the next version of glyphosate? Because we saw pesticides. We had a progression of pesticides until they just kept getting meaner and meaner and start affecting the environment, and to the point where right now you have in your body somewhere pieces and parts of old pesticides that were used back in the 60s that have been since outlawed. So we really got to look at the unintended consequences of this progress forward. But the thing that, as we mentioned earlier, that tells us why we need to do that is just like we were talking about the military industrial complex and the health industrial complex. There's a profit motive involved. Damn the effects. I'm sorry. That's one of the 7 words. I apologize.
It's not one of the 7 words. No.
But it's forget about those effects. Because right now, this is the way we can make a profit. And so if nothing else comes out of the last 4 years, if we don't learn one lesson from the last 4 years, is what the Constitution and Declaration of Independence told us to do. We need to question our government. And sometimes that's uncomfortable for Bill and I. But the reality is that that's our duty as citizens of the United States. It says it right there. And so hopefully that has opened people's eyes, and so that we never have to face this again. But in order for us to do that, as Reagan said, freedom and liberty are just one generation from extinction.
No, that's definitely true. And does that, as I have on my hat, the reason we can question our government is because we, the people, established the government.
Yeah. As long as we make sure that we don't give that right up.
Yep.
The government didn't give us our rights. We're the ones who refuse to have them taken away. Yep. Okay, there's so much you talked about, Don, but we can talk about all that stuff. We got till 10:30. I'm going to go down the list. mRNA, yeah, I think it's safe to say whether you're a state senator or I'm a state senator, we're going to make sure that would happen if we were in the state senate, right? So you can put on record, all the lobbies to oppose it, and the people in the area, that there's a future, there's existing now and a future risk to people's rights to have consent, and there's a risk to people's health. And there's a lot of people, there's pharmaceutical companies that wanted to inflict it on you without your consent or knowledge. And so that's a huge ethical issue. And I think you want people in the legislature, the House and Senate, who are going to stand their ground, maybe, dare I say, filibuster, and fight and make sure that people's health and rights are being protected. That's a critical issue. So that's going to happen. And that's a commitment I have. I know Don feels the same way too on that one.
And Thomas Haviland, who we've had on this show multiple times, he's the guy that's done studies with multiple funeral directors and embalmers from multiple states.
Yeah.
And they have proven that these huge clots that have been found in these bodies lately, and it was right after the COVID vaccine came out, and they never seen them before. And these, we're talking about clots, some of them 12 to 18 inches long, that are jamming up bloodstreams to the point where the embalmers have to remove them out. They can't even embalm the body properly without having to. This is a new phenomenon that was not part of that. Well, then Tom brought a whole new point on which I hadn't thought of. The concern is, what if they start trying to implement mRNA into our food even?
Right.
Or into other shots like the flu shot.
That was Hawley's bill.
Yeah,
and you can't say enough good things about Hawley's bills on the food supply, on the blood. If you get a blood transfusion, it's labeled, on organ harvesting, on ivermectin, which is the bill we're all going to champion next session. I can talk to you about the strategy on that. So that's what, it's unfortunate she wasn't able to make it today, but that work was super important. And that reinvigorated the conservative opposition to the healthcare industrial complex and really the lobbyist hold on Jefferson City. And so that's not done, because if it's not already right now, the flu shot you're getting, it's going to be pretty soon an mRNA shot. And they're going to give those vaccines to your kids, your babies, and they're not going to tell you it's mRNA.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. But the point is, we want a law that says you have to say that's mRNA, that's gene therapy, and what you're injecting into us or putting into us.
Yeah.
But the plan is to expose you to it without letting you know.
And they're able to do that because they were given $1 trillion of taxpayers' money, and to influence your politicians to do more of the same thing. And there is the real tragedy in all of this, is that we're paying for our own demise. And that's where people need to wake up. The other thing that, and I made this suggestion to Holly, I hope she's listening, to remind her that I think a great addition to that bill would be the one they passed in Montana against banning lab-grown meat. Of course, we know Montana is a big cattle state, right? Well, guess where Missouri's at? Well, we were fourth, now we're fifth, because a lot of our land is being purchased for other reasons. But why would anyone be against that? Right. I read a story here probably a month or two ago about some of this algae-grown protein that was formed into something that looked like meat, and it carried through the process a virus that was in there that didn't get taken out along the way. Now, it occurs naturally. Most people don't eat algae. They don't go down to the creek and dip them a spoonful of algae. And so the only way this thing came in was through this, and it was proven. It was in Europe, I believe. And there were 4 people who died from exposure to this lab grown thing that came out of this, basically a swamp somewhere, this algae. While I can see there's applications for that, especially in the energy sector. Algae's everywhere. It's easy to grow and helps clean up our streams. But eating it, totally different thing, right?
I think ivermectin should be over the counter. I'm going to co-sponsor. I'm going to file it. I know, the
have you not been to the feed store, Bill? You can get ivermectin.
Well, I think that So that the bill, the ivermectin.
I'm not encouraging anyone to take ivermectin from the feed store. This is a totally different thing.
I mean, there's a dosage idea about it, right? You don't have it has in certain quantities. It does have these toxic effects, give you stomach ache and stuff, right? So it's just like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But the bill's been filed. More of us, when you file it, co-sponsor it next year.
Yeah. So just to point out what Bill's talking about, the ivermectin you give to your horse is a pill of about a half an inch long. The one I was given, 4 little ones.
Yeah.
You could barely see them. It would fit literally on the head of a pin.
Just a tiny amount.
Tiny amount. So, and I only took 4 of those for COVID and over a 1 week period. So
there are a lot of people and a lot of my constituents, and this is another thing. The bills I filed, the bills where we're champion, they're bills and things that our constituents have been asking for. Most of the bills we have, there's somebody who says, will you do this? We need help with this. There's somebody in my district, there's somebody in this area who goes, the legislature ought to do, and we're trying to listen to them. And there are constituents that I have who they're firm believers that ivermectin has anti-cancer effects. That for whatever reason, we can talk about the mechanism of that it's an effective to fight against cancer. And I don't think I have the confidence to say everybody who has cancer should take ivermectin, although I'm almost getting there. But I do have the confidence to say, if you want to try it, that's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to go through these roadblocks and the pharmaceutical blocks if you want to try it. So I think that there should be a right to try for people that have cancer.
100%.
If they want to try ivermectin.
Yep.
And the only reason it's not over the counter right now is because exactly what we talked about, money. It's cheap and they're not profiting on it. And if it's effective for cancer, it takes away these other profit-making treatments that people have. So I think there is opposition. The bill didn't go anywhere last year, but next year more of us are going to file it. And I just, and people always laugh at me because it's so funny. In the summer and the fall, I say exactly what I'm going to do in March, April, May in the legislature. So we're going to put it on. I'm going to put it on bills and fight for it. And I just want somebody to come make me the argument that it shouldn't be over the counter, because the constituents who have cancer, the constituents who have parasitic infections, the constituents that have viral infections, they want to be able to try it. Mm-hmm. They want their doctor, to be able to give it to them without all this rigmarole, or they want us to go to the Walgreens and be able to buy it. Mm-hmm. And the issue is it's cheap. So we're going to get to the point where we have
same thing with hydroxychloroquine, right?
Hydroxychloroquine's cheap.
Yep.
It's easy to manufacture. And
has very few side effects.
And you don't make a lot of money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
The drug that costs a lot of money, that there's a patent, which patent gives the company that owns a patent a monopoly, right, to produce it and charge whatever they want. So we need to go to an era where we're not like, hey, we create the cure, which we'll talk about glyphosate in just a second, create the cure because it create the disease, create the cure, profit off, make sure the disease, the ailment lasts indefinitely, and we make all this money off these people. What our goal needs to be is that Americans are healthy again. They're not chronically sick. There's not these chronic environmentally caused illnesses, and that people are living their life without just being sick all the time and being in pain all the time. That's got to be our goal, right?
Right.
Instead of, well, how do we treat diabetes? How do we treat cancer? How do we treat this for years and years and years, recurring it? Well, let's stop. Let's take away the cause of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then let's focus on people not needing medicine the rest of their life.
As a good friend of mine who's a doctor said, that there's a lot more money in treating the symptoms. And you won't get to treat the symptoms unless the person is sick.
Yeah.
And so that was so profound. And it was like that. I think that was the epiphany for me when I realized, hey, wait a minute. What are we doing here? And most doctors will tell you right now that expediency dictates that they treat those symptoms, right? Make that symptom go away or suppress that symptom somehow, and knowing full well that there is a mechanism by which that you can remove the need for that drug or whatever, but that is not in. I think you pointed it out, or was pointed out earlier, that's not in that's business model. Right.
Yeah.
And
why is everybody sick all the time?
Yeah.
Do you think that's what God wants you to be, is sick all the time your whole life?
So I love I wish I could remember. I'm going to look it up so I can at some point. But we have something called the Certificate of Need Committee, which basically approves if you want to do some kind of industry, healthcare related industry thing in a town, you have to get permission from the state of Missouri to put in like an a clinic where they do imaging. Okay. MRI. That's the word I was looking for. And so you have to come to this committee, and then they make a determination. And then obviously the businesses in town that provide that come in and resist and say, no, we don't need another one. You're going to hurt our profit margin by doing that. And the greatest line I think I've ever heard, one of them at least in the Capitol, was that there was one of these opposing some healthcare clinic that was going in some town, and he looked at those who were opposing it and goes, now hang on just a second. He says, now are you a 1 crane hospital or a 2 crane hospital? Right. So pointing out that you're kind of making a lot of money right now.
Yeah.
And that, and so if you can afford this brand new wing or whatever, then what's the harm with a little competition? Right?
Well, I think whenever we need to take a break here in just a second, but whenever Jeff Sink comes on at 10:30, he's had this struggle fighting the whole January 6th thing with his son Ryan, but he's also now created a company called Positive Energy, and their goal is to put the care back in healthcare.
Yeah,
and so he's got a really cool thing, which that's kind of what brought it to my attention with this talk here. That might be something to take job.
Let's get him to talk about that. Yeah,
and we'll talk more about I'm going to talk about glyphosate after the break too. Talk about the history on that, and but I'm going to say something like personal too. Like I think I'm excited about if we stay strong and we fight and we change things, that we can change things. I think people can affect it, and I do mean that too. I don't think that God wants us to be sick all the time. The last couple of weeks I was so sick, I was just like coughing and like aching or whatever. And I did, and I was kind of like, man, am I ever going to shake this? And I never get sick, right? But I was sick for weeks. And I read that scripture in the Bible where they lowered him down he's in the stretcher, his friend's down there.
Yeah.
And he goes, your sins are forgiven you. Take up your bed and walk.
Right.
And then they're all kind of freaking out.
Right.
And Jesus says, what's easier, that I could forgive sins, or that you can heal, say, take up your bed and walk. And I thought that was it's fascinating to me, right? Because Jesus was basically saying, if I have the power to forgive sins, healing your body is pretty easy. Yep. And then, after that, I decided not to be sick anymore.
As a matter of fact, we have a comment here from Holly Michelle saying the rise of I'm trying to figure out that word. Pharmakia, I guess?
Pharmakia. It comes from a Greek word.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the control of people through sick care is biblical.
Yeah. So pharmakia is a Greek word, and that's where you get the word mind control. And it means witchcraft too. So, but the way that before we get the word pharmaceuticals, which is the same word for mind control and the same word for witchcraft in the Greek. But for what it's worth, that's just kind of the etymology. My classics degree coming in handy. Okay, do you guys want to take a break and come back and talk about glyphosate?
Yep.
I'm pumped about it.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
With warmer temperatures right around the corner and allergies ramping up, now's the time to get those AC units serviced. At Hartley's, we pride ourselves in offering outstanding service with fast response times. With proper maintenance, you can make those hot days be a lot cooler and remove those pesky allergens that always seem to find their way into your home. Call us today so you can be living a much cooler and healthier life. Hartley's, community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word? But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is 2 words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in 1 word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Busy schedule? Let your locally owned Price Chopper help you save time with online shopping. It's easy. Sign up to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app in the App Store or Google Play. Create an account and browse through the categories and choose the items you need. When you place your order, your personal shopper will get all of the items you've selected, taking the same care you would and following your notes. We offer free curbside pickup, so you don't even have to get out of your car. Start your online order today and no online shopping fee for a limited time. Go to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app to get started. Price Chopper. Fresher savings every day. A-Car Real Estate, where experience matters. 532 million sold since 2003, the #1 sales volume in Phelps County. As a client for decades, I can say they are the best in mid-Missouri. Call 573-368-7355. That's 573-368-7355 for the best real estate experience you'll ever have.
Gotta reach 'em, see it right now.
Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Maybe it's for a kitchen you've always wanted. Maybe it's just to have a little extra room. Whatever the reason you're considering a new home loan, it's good to know that Town & Country Bank will guide you in the right direction. Our experienced local lenders are here to help you with a new home construction, remodeling projects, and fixed and adjustable rate home loans. You can even start the process online by clicking Online Mortgage Center at tcbanks.com. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Okay, so we are? All right. So, yeah, Bill left in anger, and so we had to, no, that's a joke. He did not. He stepped up for just a minute, so left me with the microphone. Boy, now that's dangerous, JP. So, we were talking earlier about some of the things that we've seen, and, and I know Bill's going to want to touch on this when he gets back, so I'll just set him up for it. In order for glyphosate to work, that is a herbicide, by the way, in a soybean field, they had to create a soybean that was tolerant of what they call it Roundup ready soybeans. So they had to genetically engineer a soybean that would grow in a field that had glyphosate on it. Now, I think that should tell you there's something seriously wrong, right?
Okay, so Monsanto invents this. It's not. People say pesticide, which is okay. You can say whatever you want in legislature. It's a herbicide. Herbicide kills.
Yeah. So you want to, you know what the explanation of that is that weeds are a pest. Yeah. There's a stretch, right?
Yeah. They call it the pesticide bill. A lot of my colleagues do, which is fine. I'm not, if I was correcting people all the time, I'd just be able to make a business out of it, but it's a pest kills a pest.
You mean like being a lawyer, right?
I tried to be corrected, but when I got my own platform to talk, I'll try to say it accurately. So it's a herbicide. And so glyphosate kills all forms of vegetation. And it does this because plants produce this, it's kind of this protein synthesis. There's like this peptide chain, and that's what they need to grow and to have life throughout the plant, right? And plants are actually pretty interesting, complex lives. You've read studies about how plants react to people and vibration and stuff. So it kills all of it, right? So if I just got some organic seeds and organic crops in my garden, and I pick glyphosate on it, it would kill all my crops. It kills weeds, it kills everything. So like Don was saying, what Monsanto did is they genetically engineered a germline of crops that was glyphosate resistant, right? Okay, so, and this is what people would criticize Monsanto about before all this 50 years of stuff that's going to unfold, is that they created a way to increase crop yields by killing all the weeds and unwanted plants. And then they created control of the food supply, so that seed, that genetic seed is patented, right? So they controlled the food supply and the way in which you could cultivate food. Okay. So the agriculture industry largely adopted glyphosate resistant, genetically modified plants that were resistant to glyphosate because it allowed them to yield crops without having to go in there and take a hoe and weed and use the manpower and labor to do that, right? To de-weed. They could just spray glyphosate, and their corn, their soybeans, you could take your pick, were genetically modified to survive it, but all the other life wasn't, okay? So what happened was, there's a lot of things that I want to discuss that happened over time. What happened was there's a series of farmers, and they got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is the term for blood cancer. And the theory that the glyphosate causes that blood cancer is that in the plant, glyphosate isn't absorbed through the root. It's absorbed through there's like a leaf and there's stoma, which the plant breathes. It's absorbed through that, right? And so the idea is that just like the plant, the person's skin absorbs stuff into the bloodstream, and it's causing changes in the way that people, not just the flora and fauna inside your body do, but the human body, and it was causing this cancer, right? There's also a lot of people who do note that when people eat glyphosate, because glyphosate's in everything now. You go fast food, there's glyphosate in fast food. When you eat out, there's plants, there's a residual glyphosate everywhere now in the soil. And so a lot of people think too, that one of the reasons why you kind of get achy feelings and people are kind of sick is because they're ingesting the toxicity because human beings aren't genetically modified yet, I should say, to be resistant to glyphosate. They're ingesting this toxic substance and kind of making them sick, right? So kind of a backstory that's why a lot of people think that glyphosate's causing cancer when they're exposed to it. And the mechanism it gets on their skin, and just like in the plant leaf absorbs the stoma, what you could put on your skin is absorbed into your bloodstream, right? And so that's the correlation between a human being has the same, like I said, the genetic structure is these peptides, right? Adenine, guanine, thymine, uracil. These same things that are bound together are now being disrupted by glyphosate. Go ahead. You want to say something, Don?
So to make a distinguishing difference there, because it is very important, is that actually glyphosate is a broadleaf herbicide, and so practically all of our food, other than the narrow leaf grasses like rye and wheat, just about everything we grow for our food is a broadleaf plant, and so both of those are beneficial things. They're a food source for humans, but you got to think about it this way: the more and more the glyphosate appears in the environment, the more and more plants are affected by this that we depend on every day. So it's a certain category of those are what we call wild lettuces and dandelions, and this is proven science, been around for years. My grandparents and my mother utilize these plants because we're Ozark hillbillies, and there wasn't a doctor around every corner, and so these traditional plants that exist in our environment today. Now, how many people go out of their way to kill their dandelions? But actually, dandelions have very good health effects for human beings, and it's free. It's out there, and it's readily available. Well, this glyphosate kills those too, and then if and this has been the case is if the farmer next door isn't using somebody's certain patent of soybeans and they're growing it, and they cross-pollinates with their Monsanto bean, well, then Monsanto can sue and has sued farmers before for patent infringement because they didn't buy those beans. They didn't buy their beans from them. And nature, because of the way nature works, cross-pollinated. And so that meant that they were taking advantage of that particular patent. If we do one thing in Missouri, we need to do that. We need to prevent these companies from suing over essentially an act of God. There's no way that farmer A can keep his field from being cross-pollinated from farmer B. In fact, I would sue the other direction. Yeah. You ruined my beans with your pollination. But of course, that takes money in order to do that. And who's got the money? Yeah, right, Bayer, Monsanto.
So I want to describe the bill, but I think it's in full context. I should probably give Bayer's argument for the bill, and then I'll tell you why I don't like it and why we're gonna oppose it. So Monsanto was purchased by the German pharmaceutical company Bayer aspirin, which incidentally they also make the drugs that treat non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh, I have to point out. Remember, one of the arguments was, well, if we don't do this will be the Chinese are going to do it, right? Well, is there really that big a difference between the Chinese and the German pharmaceutical who gave us?
It's still a foreign company.
Right.
Well, so just to parse that argument for a second. So the argument is that if you don't manufacture glyphosate in the United States, that they're going to make it in China, which glyphosate's banned in other countries. They don't use it because it's as a health hazard, right? So the argument is that if we don't poison ourselves, we're going to buy poison from China and poison ourselves. Right, that's the argument. But instead, what we can do, and what we're going to have
to do, laugh track for that
and
one.
I'll just preview what we're going to say in January, April, or in January, February. The solution is not to keep looking the other way while you're poisoning the American people.
Yeah.
What we need to do is figure out other ways to feed the world without poisoning the American people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going to have to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
And so the agricultural industry, whose favor of glyphosate's argument is that if you can't spray these crops, crop yields will go down because it takes more effort. There's more manpower and resources to de-weed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Although they're the organic farmers who talk about, you just you use like the natural world and the birds and stuff, and that's a better way to farm. But that's their argument anyway, that they'll have lower crop yields and that'll cause prices to go up. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's the argument. This is what we've used for 50 years. This is our thing. This is agriculture. And we have to feed the world. Okay, we got to feed the world. What I'm saying is now we know that you are making the American people sick. That there's definitely, just like the University of Washington study, a correlation to some cancers. There were the teenage kids, the high school kids in the rotunda. Remember that day?
Yeah.
And the one student did the study on glyphosate, and there were these sort of simple worms that were exposed to it. And it messed up their nervous systems real bad, and it made them kind of not be able to operate, or to kind of killed them off, and they couldn't move anymore. They lost motor function. And it's interesting too, because on the floor we heard the argument that animals are not affected by glyphosate because animals have different protein chains than the ones that are attacked in plants. But these worms are animals that have the same protein chains humans do, right? And their nervous systems and motor functions were damaged once they were exposed to a small amount of glyphosate. So, I mean, there's lots of indications that it's toxic. The reason why we don't, and by the way, I'm not even saying that we ban it right now. I'll tell you exactly what my position in a second. The reason why we don't ban it is because of money, is because of industry, is because of commodity prices and yields, right? But that doesn't mean that we need to continue that way. So the bill in the House, the bill that I voted no on every year, and I think this year the no's are going to eclipse the yeses, Lord willing, is that so Bayer's having all these lawsuits that it's causing cancer, and they're paying out lots of money, and there are more lawsuits coming. And so what they want to do is in Missouri, there's a tort. It's called a failure to warn tort. So like if I said, come on into this next room over here, come into this next room and walk in, and there were like spikes on the floor, and I invited you in, you stepped on a spike, you could sue me for not warning you of this danger. If I gave you a cup of coffee and the coffee was full of arsenic, right? Like if I go, Don, I have this cup of coffee, would you like to take a drink? And it's full of rat poison, and he drank it and it poisoned him, he could sue me for not warning him about the danger. It's called a failure to warn, right? Mm-hmm. So the loss, some people are saying, is this is causing cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, these other health effects. You need to label it and say may cause cancer or may cause whatever.
Like cigarettes. You can still buy cigarettes, but there's a warning.
There's a warning.
Yep.
So Bayer doesn't want to have that warning label. So what they want is they want to say if the EPA and FERPA approve a substance for distribution, then there's no labeling requirement in Missouri, and you can't sue for failure to warn. The bill doesn't say, it hadn't said the previous versions, it doesn't say pesticide. It doesn't say glyphosate. It says failure to warn for a carcinogen.
Right.
Carcinogen means, the definition of the word carcinogen, for the record, if we're doing debate notes, is carcinogen means things that cause cancer.
Yes.
So we got a comment from Holly. Don't forget government subsidies. Do as they say. Use what they mandate and no help from them. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
Fund it.
Thank you,
invest
Holly.
in it. But then when you hurt people, don't help the people who get hurt. How about instead of don't have no mandates and have accountability for the government and corporations?
And so, of course, we were told by the scavengers who wander our halls every day. We were told that, it's not proven to be a carcinogen. Then I said, then why is that word in there?
Right.
And we're being sued all the time. And I said, and now you're settling out of court. Rather than pay $1 billion lawsuit, why not use that bill? If it truly doesn't, why not use that $1 billion to prove it in court?
Yeah.
Well, the obvious answer to that is that you would actually prove the opposite in court. Because if I'm going to pay $1 billion out every few months, wouldn't it make sense just to take that money and fight it just one time?
Yeah, because jurors who don't actually like trial attorneys necessarily are being convinced that it is causing cancer to that data. But again, to the point, like it doesn't say glyphosate or a herbicide. Mm-hmm. It says carcinogen.
Right.
So if glyphosate does not cause cancer,
why exactly
that bill is not affected by glyphosate because the word in the bill is carcinogen.
Yeah, it wouldn't if it was true that it is not a carcinogen.
Right. Then it would be then that bill would have no impact on glyphosate whatsoever.
Yeah.
But the word carcinogen is used just to deprive of all things that cause cancer if EPA or FERPA approve it for distribution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I used to teach environmental law back in the day in a past life. And so when a toxic substance gets approved for distribution, the company that manufactures it has to submit studies about its effects. The studies are paid for by the company that has the patent.
Right.
They submit their own study. That's actually how the Environmental Protection Act
global
reads.
warming, right?
And yet there's no issue with I guess what do we call it there? I mean, if you're funding this study that's going to find out if you're doing something wrong or not, chances are everything's fine.
We call that fox in the hen house.
Yes. Well, Pfizer does the same thing.
And being a guy with a hen house, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and foxes too. So
it's the exact same thing for toxic substances.
It's not too good for the hens.
For Pfizer's patent, Pfizer does the same thing. They do their own study. They pay for their own scientists and PhDs to do a research study, just like we do when the Republicans go hire a lawyer for an opinion. Somehow they say the Republicans are right, and the Democrats hire a lawyer. They say the Democrats are right.
Well, you know the old saying, Bill, that if you put 100 lawyers in a room, you get 200 opinions, right?
Yeah, but only mine's the correct one for the record. But so Pfizer, and by the way, when the COVID vaccine came out, I was reminiscing last night about my actions for that. The first thing that happened when the mandate came out is I went and I read the patent. Because I knew from teaching environmental law that they would have to have because the patent's public, they'd have to have disclosures about studies in the patent.
Oh, yeah.
And the patent talked about how, like, the dosage was modulated to have the least negative impacts on your immune system, causing cancer and heart disease. And that was in the patent that was filed like in 2017. Right. So that's like in there. And I read that and I was like, oh, this is like going to mess up your immune system. But I thought that because I was an officer in the Army, I thought that was my job to go research it. And it really bothered me that the other officers read that. They wouldn't look it up. But anyway, back to glyphosate. So the company provides its own
But the
study.
important part of that is, Bill, and the little sidelight is what you're talking about is a study that's paid for by them. And from our previous discussions, and so what we've accumulated, also the additional knowledge over the last 4 years, is that now we have the ability to identify that study group who would result in the least effect from whatever it is they're trying to sell us. And so, in other words, reverse engineering the study.
You can do that. You can also dismiss results you don't like for whatever reason as an outlier, or you could say the control variable wasn't accurately applied to the outlier effects, and you could dismiss any adverse effects. And you could say, this is what, we know, because we look at data all the time. You sit on the budget committee, you see people produce numbers. I can make, and I'm a lawyer, and you're an engineer, and you're on budget. So we both are very well aware that I can make a study or an answer or numbers produce whatever I want to. But the thing that you can't take away, like you just can't take away what people had when they had blood clots and strokes and they have these adverse immunes. You can't take away the people who are just sick. Right now, and this is the point about Make America Healthy Again, which I think that the time has come. People are just sick, like literally sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're having autoimmune issues. Cancer rates are off the chart. There's more developmental disabilities. There's more autism than before. There's more people having they're just achy all the time. They have headaches. They have no energy. What are we doing to the American people that's causing all this to happen? And why don't we start asking critical questions? And why don't we? But the reason why we started asking these questions, and we started running into a lot of resistance. And the reason why is because we know now there are a lot of companies that make a lot of money, and they don't want to change their money model. Well, that's too bad, because Don and I, we didn't get elected to represent corporations or pick the money model.
None of them guys vote for me.
Our first job is to protect the American people, their freedoms and their lives. So it's time to take a stand, and it's time to start changing things. And I think that we're sufficiently fed up to fight for keeps now.
It's critical thinking skills. And as an engineer, went to our fine University of Missouri here at Rolla. That was drummed into us. That was beat into us. Is ask the question, why? Is there another option? And what are the results of your decision? And so you have to be able to look at all sides of it before you make that decision. 3-laning I-70 in each direction. You knew I was going to get to this.
Got the vote on, yeah.
3-laning I-70 in each direction. Oh, that sounds great. But what are the engineering reasons for that? What would make us prioritize that over other things that were our priority? And is it really necessary? Well, the traveling public, the only thing they see is I'm driving down the road and I can't pass this truck. When in reality, there are other more elegant solutions. So I always use Mineola Hill, the inside passing lane solution, because the problem isn't that we've met the capacity of 2 lanes. The problem is it's a traffic flow solution. And the way we solve that traffic flow is with climbing lanes and passing lanes and those kind of things, which cost a lot less than 3-laning in both directions through territory where it's not even at capacity right now, even during quote unquote rush hour.
Yeah.
And so it's those kind of things that's missing in that decision-making process is that you have to, it is so extremely important to have those critical thinking skills. And in order to be able to analyze the problem, what the problem really is, and then come up with the solution. First, identify what the problem is, then come up with the solution. And then you prioritize that solution against other possible solutions.
Well, and we have a guy that's coming on who is trying to do that right now.
All
Jeff
right.
Zink is on live with us.
Hey, Jeff, were you listening to our discussion? Were we just for a little bit there?
I caught the very tail end of it.
Well, we would repeat it, but we don't want to take time from you necessarily.
You can call us back and we'll put it. We'll let you hear it all over again.
The biggest shame of the Dave Weinbaum Show is it's not a 6-hour show today.
Right.
As far as
yeah.
How's everything going for you, Jeff?
It's going really well. Things are starting to settle down a little bit now that I'm not political anymore. It's one of those things where, for 4 years I lived the political life and and now I'm serving the private sector, and so things have kind of taken off in big time. We met with one of the leading candidates for governor of California, Louis Herm. And I met him at Rev 17, which was a weekend, 2 weekends ago, that we raised $2 million over the weekend to buy a women's prison that has basically been abandoned. And so they were selling it off for $4 million. The church that Pastor Dave Bryan is with, the Church of Glad Tidings there in Yuba City, what he did was he just had on his heart to buy that prison so that we can, when we do capture the sex trafficked women and children, we have a place to put them. But more importantly, we have tier 1 veterans that are going to guard the outside, so that in case the cartel or whoever wants to come and get them back, they're going to be met with deadly force. And it's going to be a safe haven. So it's actually called a Piece of Heaven .life. It is the website if anybody wants to go to it. And the thing is that in doing all of this, I was able to meet a lot of great people, a lot of great speakers, and literally it was the first time in 5.5 years that I was in the pulpit preaching, and that was a special moment for myself. For the simple fact is that I knew something was wrong when the pandemic, came out, and my church basically here in Phoenix decided that not only were they going to close down the church, mask everybody, but they also talked about getting the vaccine. And then FEMA came in and used the church as the stepping stone for Arizona, and basically came in during that whole time. And because I stated that we're going to keep the doors open, we're not going to be masked, we're not taking the vaccine, we're going to rely on God, not on government. I was basically shown the door, and I started my political career shortly after that, and trying to change, what we now are starting to know what is actually happening. I knew back then. So it's kind of been a long journey of fighting with government, with J6 and my son and everything else. And now what's happened is that I have an opportunity because of being in the position I was, being looked at HHS. I have hundreds of thousands of doctors that gave me research, helped me, that if I went in, that I was going to be able to, tone down the pharmaceutical companies and start looking at healthcare. And so I had a plan put together, and this plan ended up being what I have now, which is Positive Energy. We're still working on the website. We're still trying to get things up, but we're going to be able to offer the general public $30 a share who wants to, invest in the company. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in and literally buy up failing hospitals. One of the things that's really discouraging is that CVS has decided to move out of Arkansas, all because Sarah Huckabee said PBMs can no longer own pharmaceutical companies. Well, now you have 23 pharmacies that have uprooted out of Arkansas. Your state has a huge problem right now with pharmacies. You got 2 counties that have no pharmacies in Missouri that y'all are relying on the FedEx and because you don't want to do the United States Postal Service because that's government run and it really doesn't work as efficient as FedEx and UPS and DHL. But the fact that you have 2 counties in your state that doesn't have a pharmacy in there is criminal, and it's criminal on so many levels of our health system. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to start buying those up, and then we're going to re-establish the sanctity of life. So no abortions will ever be performed in any of the hospitals that we own. That we will do the patient rights. And I don't know if y'all heard this or not. So, Dave always expects me to break news on his show. But do you know that when you enter into a hospital, that when you sign the admittance papers, that you have now signed your rights away? And most people don't know that. And there was a court case in California that a 19-year-old Down syndrome girl went in for a routine procedure and was literally murdered by the doctors, by the hospital. It went to court, and the jury found in favor of the hospital. So we're looking at trying to help the people out and trying to raise some money for them so we can get it into the appellate court, because I think that we will win that. But by all purposes, in looking into this, what we found is that they had signed their rights away, and so what they did was they put in a DNR for her, but then the medication that was given to her literally put her in peril, caused her heart to stop, and a DNR prevented them from doing anything, and she passes away. So this is the kinds of Medicare, Medicaid, and healthcare that I'm tired of seeing. It's not what I signed up for. We want best care, not worse care. And that's literally what I'm now on the front lines here, fighting to implement so that people can have their rights restored and be relaxed that you're going to a hospital that will restore your health, that can fight for life and stuff. And so these are the things that we're doing now.
Yeah, that absolutely essential. To provide a healthcare choice where you're actually getting healthcare, and appreciate you doing that. So where are you at in that process, Jeff? You had the fundraiser. Have you guys and you purchased the former prison? But where are you at in this expanding that across the United States?
Well, right now what we're doing is that it's twofold. So one of the things is I was able to talk with JP in regards to what we're doing. So we have several things that are being looked at. Not only are we raising money for positive energy, but what we're also doing is we have a health insurance policy. And so that health insurance policy in September 1st, we'll be able to offer that as an individual, and it'll be kind of like a pick and choose what you want. So it depends on what is that individual would like to have. But
so you mean like
we actually
if
went
I don't need maternity, I won't have to pay for maternity care?
No, you won't have to have maternity or anything like that. But that isn't when you sign up, if your spouse if you get somebody who could have that, they could sign up. The main thing is that with this insurance, what we're planning on doing and what we want to give the American people is an alternative to Obamacare, to Medicaid, Medicare. What's sad is that HHS, the nepotism now is really concerning. You have Bobby coming out saying that we have this new insurance company, and the cost is about $75 a month. It has an HSA Flex card, which is a health savings account, but the deductible is like $10,000. I don't know about you, but if you have to get into $10,000 before your insurance picks up, that's not much of an insurance policy.
Well, except for nowadays, the way the pricing works in these hospitals, that $10,000 looks like the rebate you get on a new car, right? They'll give you $1,000 rebate on an $82,000 Suburban, right? And
correct.
So that $10,000 looks small compared to that $2.5 million fee for the broken arm that you had, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the things that where our insurance, what we looked at, ours is a $1,000 deductible. If you have to stay in the hospital for 24 hours, the insurance will cut you $1,000 check. Now, a lot of people don't think about this, but if I have a loved one, if Stephanie, my wife, got sick or something like that, and we were out of town and had to take her to the hospital, then what's going to happen is she stays in 24 hours, a $1,000 check will be put into our bank account after that, in that 25th hour. What happens is that is for expenses, going out to eat, gas, having a hotel. Hopefully the loved one won't be there for very long. However, the other part of the insurance will kick in after that first day, and then every day will be $100 that will be added for 30 days. And so this is to help assist the family at a crucial time when they need the money at the front of this and trying to help them out. The other is that we have a biomed, and biomed will actually, when we take the blood, we'll sit down and we'll look at what we are that individual has, and we have 73 different cursors, and those markers that we look at, we can tell for young men, like JP and Don and yourself and Bill, all of these things, we can look and see what your rate of cancer may be when you're 55 or 60, and so, this is something that can be critical, that we can help change and alter your lifestyle from the very beginning, and we can bring that all the way down to less than 2% of you having any type of cancer later on in life.
So addressing beneficial outcomes, getting a preventative maintenance, those kind of things, rather than treating the symptoms that we had talked about earlier.
Correct. So what we're planning on doing is, everybody understands worst care. That's what we call 2.0 medicine. What we're trying to introduce is 3.0 medicine. This is best care. And so what we'll do is as we go in, we also have something called NaviPro. Now, Navimatrix Pro is an AI program that can be attached to any health insurance. And what it does is it will look at your lifestyle, what's going on, what you've had in the past, and what's presently going on, and you won't fall through the cracks. A lot of times what happens is that somebody goes and gets a blood test, and then the lab 3 weeks later there's still no results. Now, what most people don't understand is that blood, most of the time, is sent to either India or some other foreign country, and then is processed. And so that's the reason why there's such a delay. The blood that we take, it is with our labs, and it will be done within 48 hours and results, so that we can determine what's going on. And so what's going to happen is that with that Navi Matrix, we're able to make sure that no one falls through the cracks, and that everything comes through, and that there's a follow-up with that. We have another part of this called a maze, and a maze is it got its name because going through the healthcare industry and the insurance, the billing and being paid and all of that, it's like a maze that you have to kind of run through.
Yeah.
So hence they call it a maze, and so here's a couple of things that we can do. So let's say that you have a child that's that none of these children ever get sick at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's always during office hours of your doctor. It's always during the hospital during the day. So it's very convenient and everything else. We know that's not true. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, what is your choice?
Go to the emergency room.
Right.
Well, you can go to the emergency room. You can wait it out until your doctor's office opens up at 9 o'clock. You can call your on-call doctor, maybe, if they do have that service and everything. This is the system that we have. How would you like this? You have an app on your phone. You can hit that app. A maze comes in, says, "Hi, this is Jeff." And we're very much like this right here. You're seeing me, I'm seeing you, and we're gonna have this dialogue. And so what's going to happen is that, "Hi, I'm Jeff with the Maze, and how can I help you?" And you're going to tell me, "Well, my little kid is sick, and this, that, and the other." Okay, we can ask you to use your thumb, all right, to thumb print right there. You're going to place that on your phone. We can get your temperature off the phone. The pulse rate that goes through your thumb, we can get your pulse and stuff. And through that, we can also calculate your blood pressure. So the child's temperature, pulse, and blood pressure can be taken by touching the phone. You also have the choice of any doctor that you choose. If you want a pediatrician will come on. If you want a naturopathic doctor, then a naturopathic doctor will get on there. If you want a Chinese doctor that has the elixirs for 5,500 years of science of how to make people healthy, then you're going to have that individual come on. It's your choice as to which doctor. We've actually written over 7,000 ICD billing codes and diagnosis codes that our insurance will pay out. Now, mind you, about 3 years ago, we went to Blue Cross Blue Shield, to United Health, to Aflac, to Travelers, to Cigna, to all of the major medical group, and showed them what we wanted. All of them got up, said they're not interested, and walked away. So we went to Lloyd's of London, and Lloyd's of London actually are backing us, and as we're putting this together. Here's another thing. So I'm going to pick on JP. JP is in the kitchen, which he's not in very often, takes a knife, and he cuts
right
himself.
Where he belongs. Just joking. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
And so he cuts himself, and now he is needing to go to the ER to get some sutures. So he drives onto the ER parking lot, Now, what we've done is we geo fenced every ER in the country. You drive onto the parking lot, and all of a sudden you're going to get, "Hi, this is Jeff with Amaze. JP, we noticed that you just drove up onto the parking lot of an ER. Is everything okay?" At that point, he's going to go, "No, I cut myself. I've got to get some stitches and everything else." And we go, "Can you hold on just one second?" They're going to call that ER, and they're going to find out what the waiting time is. They're going to find out what is going on there. And then while they're doing that, they're looking at the surrounding area to see if there is a doctor's office that can provide the same service at a cheaper price, and will also be able to see you in a shorter period of time. We come back on and say, "Hey, JP, the waiting time for the ER is 4.5 hours. But we have a half a mile down the road, we have this other doctor that we've already called and set up an appointment for you. By the time you drive down there, walk in, they should be able to receive you. You should be able to get that." Now, here's another thing that we do that is different than any others. When you show that you have insurance and you ask for a cash price, the healthcare provider cannot provide that information to you. They're contractually obligated to only give you the insurance price, which is oftentimes a lot higher. So we're going to be able to, so what they're going to be doing while you're getting, JP's getting sutured up, they're asking for the cash price and they're asking for the insurance price. When he gets out, he's going to have a text on his phone that's going to give him both those prices. Now it's up to him how he wants to handle this. Does he want to pay for this out of pocket, or does he want the insurance to pick it up? And so these are the types of choices that we've sat down and thought about, and what we're trying to do in making sure that the patient has the choice of what they want in their health care.
I like the cash price idea.
Yeah.
But the monitoring where JP's in the parking lot idea, that seems a little creepy to me. I get some, you know what I mean? Like, because I also like the idea of everybody staying out of my business, right, and having privacy. Like, I think it's a lost idea too.
So on this, Jeff, now this, when I make this phone call, is this some AI generated avatar?
Is Don going to call it right now?
No, you're going to get a live person. It's made 24/7, 365. It's a live person,
unscripted.
So you have a a network of, it would have to be several thousand providers out there.
1.4 million physicians are available across the United States.
That is great. And so on the charge code thing, the reason why all those guys turned you down, because your charge code system probably made sense. But all these insurance companies, you're probably already aware of this, rely on CMS as a list of charge codes. And obviously we know who designed those charge codes, right? And so a lot of times, and I'm experiencing this right now with a group of medical professionals out there that my predecessor, Keith Frederick, created a licensing procedure, not to be full doctors, but it's these folks who don't get matched up on a residency, and so there's thousands of them, literally. Well, he created an AP program which the 18 other states have now copied to allow those people to go to work. The only problem is that we can't get CMS to come up with a charge code for those folks, so they are still prevented from working in our hospitals. And so that's 5,000 to 13,000 trained doctors who have passed, almost all of them have passed all three examinations that were required prior to them going into residency and to be a doctor, but they can't go to work because CMS won't create a charge code for them. Well, we don't have a doctor shortage in this country. We have a residency shortage, but I'm not saying the solution is more residencies, because that's money that comes out of Medicare. What I'm saying is that we need an alternative path to licensure than have it throttled down by ACGME, and that's probably an acronym that you're familiar with. It is without a doubt a nearly criminal organization that that prevents us in rural areas from getting doctors practicing out here. And so anything that can break that mold, I am 100% for.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Jeff, is are you online with that right now? We can sign up for that right now.
Well, what we're doing is that we're if an employer that has more than 10 employees contact me, you can contact me at jeff@positiveenergyaz.com. I'll be more than happy to sit down and talk with the CEO or CFO or whoever's in charge of signing up their insurance, and we can do that. September 1st is when we have the individual plans that are going to be rolling out. We need to make sure that those are in place and perfect, and so we're delaying it a little bit more. So we can do that, and then hopefully next Monday, Positive Energy's website will be up. It'll be twofold. It will explain, about what Navi Matrix and Biomed and what Drexy is. I didn't even talk about Drexy. Drexy is the drug end of ours that knocks off 30 or 60 to 80% of what you pay there now. We are the cheapest drug company there, and we're providing the cheapest drugs, and it's not the quality goes down. You have the same quality. It's just we're going to make sure that you get an off brand that isn't under all of the patents that are making all of the money for the drug companies or anything else. So all of these things are what we're going to have in place. So the individual is September 1st, and then right now, any employer over 10 employees that are looking to save money, and we also we can help them with the self-funding, so they get tax write-offs, and we're helping. Like one gentleman, I'll do this in 30 seconds. We had one company that came in with 700 employees, 689 qualified. The others that didn't worked less than 20 hours a week, and so therefore could not qualify for that. But everybody else that worked 40 hours hourly, and then when they had salaried people there, they all qualified. This company was going to be able to write off $404,000 in taxes that they were never able to write off before using our system. So it's a lot better than anything else that's out there.
Well, that's pretty fascinating stuff. Maybe I'll give you one more minute, Jeff, to tell us what you know about your company, and then Don and I will kind of close out the show if that's okay.
Okay. So again, it's going to be Positive Energy, and it's positiveenergyaz.com. That's going to be and you got to bear with us because we're really trying to put all of this information as we're bringing this up. All of this is not conceptual. This has been going on for over 3 years. So the insurance, the hospital, that we have, all of that is a working, viable company that's already in place. And then Positive Energy, when you invest in Positive Energy, then we're going to go out and we're going to buy rural hospitals like in your area, and then be able to then offer this type of insurance program and bring in the doctors that you're needing to help give and putting health back into healthcare.
Well, that's awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, Jess, for coming on and visiting with us and hanging out with us and joining us on the special 4th of July edition of the Dave Weinbaum Show. Hope you have a good
happy 4th of July, everybody. Freedom doesn't come free, and I thank all of our veterans that have, some gave all and some gave some. But the thing is that we need to understand that this day of independence that gives back is very important. So I look forward to being on Dave's show. And I think this is the best Dave show I've ever been on. I'm amazed at how great this show's been.
Universally, the feedback we're getting on social media.
Oh boy, we're gonna have something started now.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy Independence Day.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't want to leave the Independence Day without mentioning Mordecai Gist. Most people don't even know who he is, but at the Battle of Long Island, he took 276 soldiers and held off 2,000 Highlanders, well-trained Highlanders entrenched. Almost a battle of Thermopylae kind of a situation in order to allow Washington to escape New York. And without that happening, without his delaying action, there wouldn't have been a revolution.
Yeah, no,
look him up.
Yeah, thank you. It's an amazing day. I really like it, the 4th of July. I like us celebrating our country, the Declaration of Independence, our freedom. I like families getting together. I like cooking. I like reminding us that our rights come from God, and the only just powers of the government arrive from the consent of the governed. And be thankful for what we have in America, because it's up to us to keep it. So, Don, any parting words before we take off?
Oh, shout out to Cindy Jones for reading the Constitution at the courthouse the other day.
That was amazing.
Yeah, so it's something that we need to do everywhere at every courthouse. Thank you very much, Cindy Jones.
JP, you want to say something before we take off?
Just appreciate all of our guests, and appreciate you, Bill, and Don, for guest hosting on a very special edition of the Dave Weinbaum Show. They'll be back next Friday, and but again, maybe best show ever. I don't know.
Maybe
probably the best show
maybe
ever.
Not. We'll have to find out.
Yesterday, JP said you guys would rehearse, and this is completely unrehearsed and unscripted, like 100%. So we just it's the best show ever, with minimal effort from me and Don. So God bless you guys. Happy 4th of July. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, JP, for coming in today.
Thank you all.